Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Electric Live. Today we're talking all about modding consoles, and joining me is Moondog, a member of Shmup Junkie's audience that I have stolen away from him to appear on my episode. How's it going, my dude?
Hey.
So I thought it'd be funny. What happened was the other day I was out walking around, and I thought, I feel like doing a random Discord call because I haven't done those in forever. And I posted it in Shmup Junkie's channel, and that's how actually we ended up getting introduced to each other. It's just a random Discord call, and we started talking about console modding, and then the gears started spinning, and I thought, this is going to be a great episode because I have been wanting to discuss console modding on Electric Live for a while, but not a whole lot of people are super into it, so sometimes it can be hard to find someone, and so perfect match.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I guess I want to explain a little bit about this episode because I remember when I posted it, people were commenting already on the title of the episode, which is Console Modding is the Future. And I think people were thinking that I was saying that console modding will appear in the future. That's not exactly what I mean. What I mean is that console modding, I talked about this in a previous episode on Electric Uncut actually, when it comes to video game preservation. A lot of people, at least over the past few years, I think this has changed, but when I first started getting into YouTube and stuff, people were saying that the only way to preserve games, the best way to preserve games, is to buy the physical copies and collect the physical copies, because one day Sony and Nintendo and all those different people are going to shut down the online stores. They're going to put in little secret kill switches into your PS4, which I predicted actually, so that your PS4 just dies. The PS3 actually has stuff like that too, but not as extreme. And so I was saying that sounds good on paper as long as you have the physical copies of the discs or whatever. But it turns out I don't think that's sufficient. And I think that's starting to show that that method actually is not sufficient, because the further you get on, either you're going to have all the hardware just die on you, like the 360s one day will just all die, or the PS4s one day will just all die. Or you can get things like with the Nintendo Switch, where as games come out, they require higher firmware versions locked in. So if you have, let's say you bought a game, Breath of the Wild 2 when that comes out, and you hold on to that for years, and then you manage to get a Switch, and the online service on the Switch is gone, but that Switch has some older firmware, and you stick that Legend of Zelda cartridge inside that Nintendo Switch thinking, it's okay, I've got the physical cartridge, it's all going to work. That Switch is going to be like, nah, homie, I'm not going to play that. The firmware is too low. And so even with the physical cartridges, even with the physical discs, and there's also disc rot and just general wear and tear, your apartment catches on fire, there's a flood, all kinds of different things. I personally think that just physically collecting the games is not sufficient, and that when it comes down to it, the strongest method of preservation is through digital backups and hardware mods. That way you can make use of those digital backups and also just get the consoles to do things they wouldn't otherwise do. So I thought that would be that's the idea of this episode when it comes to console modding is the future. And one of my favorite things about this topic is that when I first started it on YouTube, just as a viewer, before I even started streaming and doing all my videos and everything, I remember a lot of retro gaming channels in the past, it was much more fashionable to kind of snub console modding and to snub emulation and be like, that's what dirty pirates do, that's what scrubs do. The real retro gamers, they use the real hardware and the real physical games, and that was like a big thing. And then over the years, it's been really funny to watch all those YouTubers slowly change their tune, and there's never a point where they just make a video like, you know what, I was sort of wrong about console modding, I was wrong about emulation, it is actually really good. But you'll notice over the years, they'll start doing videos covering emulation, covering jailbreaks, and they sort of like dip their toes into it. Yeah. And so I think there is one particular turning point, which is that big RGB craze a few years ago, like with My Life and gaming and everything like that. I think that was the point where a lot of people started saying, wait a minute, I can console mod and it's not necessarily piracy, because in the past everyone associated piracy and console modding, oh, they're one and the same. People just say it's not piracy to defend their console modding or whatever. So I thought we'd begin there. So, because you mentioned too that you actually began RGB modding. So let's start with the RGB mod craze, because I think that's where a lot of the console modding we see today sort of took off in the more retro gaming scene.
Right, yeah. With RGB mods, it's really just updating your hardware to like a more modern output, you know? Like using composite, it's just really bad because it mixes all your colors and, you know, your sync together, and it's like just a mess when you get it on the TV.
Right.
Um, so some of those old systems used like S video, like Super Nintendo had S video output, which was fairly rare, but I mean, Sega Genesis actually has a native RGB output.
Right.
Um,
And I remember when that was shared early on, everyone's like, "Oh, Genesis is better." Win.
right.
Genesis wins. Isn't it some
but-
of the Super Nintendos have native RGB, but it's like only certain models or some crap like that?
I don't remember exactly.
Yeah.
I want to say some of them are definitely easier to mod to get RGB out of.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I remember when that was a thing on the Super Nintendo, I went ahead and bought the RGB mod chip, and I went and I opened up my Nintendo to install it, and then I looked at my CRT and I realized, wait a minute, my CRT doesn't accept RGB, and so I have that chip still sitting in a drawer. I never used it. I could, I guess, still mod my SNES with RGB, but I just thought, wait a minute here, I'm gonna put all this effort in. I'm gonna go ahead and solder all this stuff, and I'm not going to be able to plug it into anything. So I never went through with my SNES RGB mod. And then by the time I was interested, and when I got my OSSC and everything, the Mister came out, and we'll talk about the Mister probably at the end, because I've already yabbered on about the Mister. But so my motivation to RGB mod my SNES never quite came through. But it sounds like you went ahead and modded it. How was that experience?
Yeah, I modded one. So there's certain models of SNES that can output component, but it's not. One of the commenters said the SNES has native RGB, which is interesting because technically it's native, as in the graphics processor will output it. However, there's no like connection that goes from the processor to the actual output on the back of the console. So you have to open it up and take that out.
Right.
Same thing with component video. You have to go in there and take it out. I did mod a Super Nintendo to do that.
What model of Super Nintendo?
I
Is it like the fat one or the mini one? I'll just say that. Is it like the little mini one or the big fat one?
Right. It's not the SNES Junior. The SNES Junior is a pain in the ass. It needs,
I have it. Yeah, I have a SNES Junior. That's my Super Nintendo.
They make mod kits, and the SNES Junior actually puts out the cleanest RGB when you do mod it out of all of them. I don't think it puts out S video as well. So there's just a few different things in there. So the later SNES models, the one chip consoles they call them, because they consolidated a few of the chips in the later revisions, probably for price reasons or whatever. So they actually have a CXA chip, a Sony CXA chip, which puts out really clean S video, and you can actually. So over the years, they put out more and more CXA chips, so you can actually get a later model. I actually have one right here, very tiny chip, that puts out super clean S video. So actually, if you put that side by side with RGB, you probably couldn't even tell the difference.
Yeah, that's a great point, and this is something I didn't put in the outline, but it's actually something that I remembered is, along with this big craze for the RGB mods, especially on the SNES and Genesis and everything, was that huge craze for PVMs. And as someone who wanted a PVM, I remember how much of a nightmare it became to try and get one. I actually never did end up getting one because they were too small, I found out, for me, because I like my CRTs nice and big. But yeah, I think it became this whole kit that people bought. I remember even Cinemassacre, Mike Matei had like all episodes about this. Like it really caught on. It wasn't just the hardware heads that were really into it. And I remember trying to get a PVM, and I went ahead and called like local news stations, like, hey, do you have any old PVMs lying around? because I was. It's really hard to find that kind of stuff in Idaho. And the guy was like, "Oh, we threw them all out last year." I was like, "Damn it!"
Ooh,
Yeah,
wow. There's
I
so much
probably
money
could,
now too.
I know I probably could have got like 50 of them and then just resold them and got piles of money, but damn it. Did you ever end up getting a PVM?
No, like you said, they're very small, the screen size,
Mhm.
and I prefer just a bigger screen. So,
Yeah, I know. So
like the
did you?
picture, I'm sure is incredible, but I'm just not sure if it's worth the trade-off for my personal whatever.
So what route did you end up going with your RGB mod consoles? Did you do what's that one, FrameMeister or an OSSC, or did you just hook it up to a I'm trying to think, like
So,
just an LCD or something?
right, yeah. So, I have an OSSC myself, which is excellent. I highly recommend it. It doesn't add any delay at all. The FrameMeister, like the FrameMeister, the picture quality on it is going to be like a slight tick higher than the OSSC. However, it does add 2 frames of delay.
I know,
And
that's crazy.
all right,
So we're talking
yeah.
about
So
we were talking about PVMs and OSSCs and FrameMeisters and how the FrameMeister has two freaking frames of input lag. And I remember actually consulting with people this early on because I don't know if you remember, but there was a time when everyone had to have a FrameMeister. It was like the thing to
yeah,
buy. Everyone was freaking out. They're like, "Oh my God, it's $5 trillion to buy one, but it'll change your life and everything." And even back then, I was looking at it and I was like, because I'm such a stickler for input lag. I'm like, 2 frames, bro. That's a lot of lag. That's a lot of lag. Why don't you just play with lower resolution at that point? I mean,
yeah,
I get the idea
absolutely.
of playing with higher resolution, especially for capturing and streaming and everything, but 2 frames is a lot. That is a lot of lag.
Yeah, 2 frames is unacceptable to me. As far as like that kind of thing goes, like I think from the controller to your TV, 3 frames max is really what I play with. But yeah, you could. So there's also TVs, mostly from Europe, that actually have a SCART connection in the back, so you don't even need a
Right.
OSSC or FrameMeister. There's some people who actually will mod their TVs. You can mod an American CRT to input RGB as well,
Yeah.
and I'm sure that's going to gain a little popularity. Um,
The thing about it is, I've talked to different people about this. Is some people say don't do it because it's like super dangerous to open up your CRT and it might blow you up might kill you with the electrical shock. And then
it is.
other people are like, nah, don't be a baby. Go ahead and open it up. But I have this. I'm not going to turn the camera because it's a delicate setup here. But I'm sitting next to a massive CRT. It's a Sony Trinitron. I think like 32-inch or something. I need to measure it, but it's one of the. It's like the biggest one besides the rear projections. It is massive CRT, and I went to go open it for like. I was just like, let me go open it just to see, and I started unscrewing it. I'm like, this thing's gonna murder me. This is gonna be my obituary. Nerd murdered by CRT. So I'm too scared to open this thing to mod it.
Yeah, it really is dangerous. Like I wouldn't recommend doing it to anybody unless they're really confident. There's a guy who does a good video on it. I can't remember what the heck his channel name is, but he does a lot of like old PC stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
I remember watching one of those videos, and the guy, what did they degauss it or whatever they call it when they let the charge out, and it's like, yeah, it cracked really loud. I was like, oh, that's a heart attack right there. So, and I'm stupid enough because I gotten shocked the crap out of just doing like little regular mods on things. I remember like modding an arcade stick board, and I got shocked by the damn thing. I was like, all right. I'm not the one to be opening up these CRTs. That is, I think, the final frontier, though. I think that would be really cool if someone. Except the problem with CRTs, again, is how are you going to do this? Because the old school way of doing it back in the 50s and 60s and everything is the repairman came to your home. He like knocked on the door, came in, opened your TV, and fixed it. Imagine even if someone opened a service for CRT modding, imagine the shipping costs of sending them your CRT. It'd be like $150 just to send them your CRT.
right, yeah, that would be just terrible. But I think the OSSC is a good middle ground. Although I don't know if you can even use it on a CRT. I don't think there's any CRTs that accept HDMI because that's all it outputs. But
No. So the workaround for me, my setup is, and it's kind of hilarious because there's so many components, but it is possible. Here's what you do. You go from, because I have RGB on my arcade boards, and my arcade boards just put out RGB basically. So I was like, okay, I got to figure a way to get this RGB onto my CRT. And there's actually two different routes. One is it goes out from the arcade board in RGB. Then I have this converter thingy that I bought from Australia that changes the RGB to S video, and that S video just goes into the CRT. And then I output another I like splice it, and then I put it in the capture card. It's this whole thing, and then it looks like shit on the CRT. And I was like, so I got tired of that method. So the second method that I do now, which is hilarious, but it works, is it goes from the PCB supergun from RGB into my OSSC, and then my OSSC outputs HDMI. And then I use that HDMI converter I made that video on that converts the HDMI to VGA, and then I put the VGA into an Extron Emosha 2, and then the Extron Emosha puts out the VGA in a super crisp, clean S video, like the cleanest S video I've ever seen, which goes onto my CRT. And surprisingly, in all those steps, there's no lag. Or if there is, it's like not even a frame, because all these are frameless converters. So, and I have tested it. I get 2 frames of input lag, which is really good, which is less than you get on a gaming monitor on my CRT with Ketsui. So it works. It's just an insane setup, but that's how I do it.
Yeah, I think S video is probably the most underrated video output.
Yeah. Whenever I buy a CRT, I always make sure it has S video.
Yeah, I actually have this old Dell Ultra Sharp monitor that accepts S video, and I want to say it has 1 frame of delay, so it's pretty sweet to play like Super Nintendo on, because it puts S video out like natively, not even with mods or anything. And same with Nintendo 64. That's one that's like really hard to get a good picture out of, as anybody who plays it knows. I suggest S video for N64 before you even try all those HD mods and stuff, because they're really expensive, and honestly you won't see a difference.
I know. Yeah, I almost feel like I get RGB's the better signal, but if you put a really crisp, clean S video next to an RGB, which I have done, I mean, it's not like, oh my gosh, night and day. Like if you put a composite next to an S video, you're like, okay, this is huge. Because doesn't it? Right. Because S video has all the colors on one channel, but it separates out the sync, so it doesn't look blurry because it separates that out.
Yeah, especially if you have a really good encoder like the one I showed, the CXA 2000 series, which is like I want to say it came out in like the early 2000s, which is obviously much newer than the early 90s that the SNES came out and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I remember people RGB modding their N64s and stuff. And even then I was like, but the thing is that the N64, no matter how much you spin and try and, make the wheel square, that thing is just an ugly console video output wise. It just kind of is. As much as I love the N64. So I've always personally said with N64, see, this is where modding separates us, is go with emulation for the N64 if you want clean video, because that thing just, in my opinion, just cannot put out a really crisp, clean polygon sort of thing or whatever, like a PS1 can. But if
the video is super soft.
Yeah, but if you emulate it, you can get those razor sharp, like Sin and Punishment on N64 through emulation. I love the way that game looks. It's just razor sharp graphics, and that's how I like those early style graphics. I like them really, really sharp.
Yeah. If you've ever played that reminds me, it kind of a little off topic, but Super Mario 64, they released the source code for that, so you can get like an actual native game. Yeah. And even for like small niche devices, like these devices you get from China that emulate stuff, you can actually get Mario ports on that, and they look super crisp.
Yeah,
like it's.
Do you have the forbidden PC port?
I don't.
Yeah, they released the PC port of that, and it's fantastic. I remember when it came out, I was going to do a video on it, and YouTube was like copyright striking everyone left, right, and center. I was like, ooh, okay. I don't want to take the hit for a Nintendo game, but yeah, I have that PC release, and it's really good. I guess what you have to do is when you're... The problem is it's in 16:9 too, so if you were speedrunning, you can't really lie and say it's emulation either, because it's in 16:9. But it's really good.
And there's levels like the water level with the whale in the middle or is it a whale or a submarine, something like that?
Yeah.
And it like lags really bad on the original hardware, but not so much on the ports.
Yeah. You know, the frustrating thing about the N64 is when it comes to speedrunning, I don't think a lot of the N64 emulators have the slowdown all that correct. I'm not 100% an expert on this, but it makes it so like all the top tier N64 runners don't really accept emulation or don't play on emulation, and they split out the boards, which is unfortunate because emulation is just such a better experience. So maybe one day though, all the N64s will explode and die, and then everyone will have to play on emulation or something. Because I was gonna say maybe they'll do an HD port, but they did an HD port and it was garbage because they removed like all the fun glitches and everything, and they removed So Long Gay Bowser, and I'm just not a fan.
Yeah, that's another thing that you touched on there was that physical hardware is deflationary. You know, like they're never gonna make more, but it's always gonna be reduced, the supply. So software modding to some extent is gonna be the only thing left. You know, at some day. You know.
Yeah. And in the world of shmups, that day is now. Which is funny because when you try and talk to speedrunners about this, they're like, posh. There'll be N64s forever. There'll be Super Nintendos forever. What are you worrying about? But if you're a shmup player, that day is now. Because how many of us are playing Gwange on a PCB? How many of us are playing these games on PCBs? Basically, a very small amount because the PCBs are insane. And there's even like a little niche market with the PGM bootleg carts of like playing on bootlegs and stuff. Or the Mister now is really going to be I think the key ingredient for that with emulation. And I think that day is going to come eventually with the older consoles as well. But it'll probably take a little bit more time. But think of it like even more obscure games, though. You're going to start running into problems. And this actually brings me to my second point when it comes to the RGB craze, which is, so the first step of like the purist down the darkness modding rabbit hole was, okay, we got you to RGB your console. So we got you there. Now the next step is, oh, you want to play this super rare game that costs $5 trillion, and even you, as pure as you are, cannot bring yourself to buy that game. So then the next step is flash carts. And the funny thing is a lot of retro gaming people for a while didn't think that flash carts are modding, but they absolutely are modding. They're the products of modding because they have to get around the lockout and the anti-piracy chips and everything in your systems. And so I thought that'd be the next step, which was flash carts. Do you yourself have any flash carts? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I actually have right here. I have a turbo flash cart.
Nice.
For the PC Engine. I have a Super Nintendo flash cart.
Right.
And a Sega Genesis flash cart.
Oh yeah, you're locked and loaded. So I have a Super Nintendo flash cart that's super jank and old, but I refuse to upgrade it, which is the Super UFO. Have you heard about that one?
No, I haven't heard of that.
It's this flash cart where it has a cartridge slot on the top of it. So you plug it into your Super Nintendo, and then you're supposed to plug a cart on top of it, and it's supposed to like emulate the chip inside that to play the ROMs that chip belongs to. So theoretically, if you put in like a Star Fox cart, you could play Doom or something because it has the same chip inside it. And if you match up the chips, it should be able to match them up. That doesn't actually work. I haven't been able to get that to work. And so it basically can only play like the non-chip games. I've got it, like I tried it with Mega Man X, and I got Mega Man X to launch, but past stage 1, the game just crashes. So I think people were saying, but the cool thing about that Super UFO though is that it can actually rip your carts. Now that is cool. So you can rip the ROMs off your carts. So that's one of my main reasons why I like it so much.
Yeah, that's super valuable.
Yeah.
So that can you get the saves off there?
Yeah. You can get the ROMs and the saves off there.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah. I really do wish that whole matching the chip thing worked, but I haven't. Maybe some, expert on that thing can get it to work. But everyone who bought it that I checked, they're like, no, this actually does not work.
Yeah, I want to say there's like 3 different types of SNES carts, like as far as like the chip layout goes.
That's like the SA1, the Super FX, and I forget the SA2. Are those it?
I don't know. I don't remember the names to be honest, but there's definitely more revisions than any other system that I could think of.
Yeah, Proto Luigi saying that the 3D All Stars runs on emulation. Absolutely, which is a subject we might touch on in the end, which is hilarious. Which is all these bigger companies like Sony and Nintendo are trying to sue the crap out of people making emulators, and then they're like, you know what? But we'll go ahead and use that technology in our systems because that's actually kind of a good idea.
Yeah, they want to get in on the the money coming in on that.
But yes, so flashcard wise, that's really the only flashcard I have. The flashcard that I dream of getting one day is I dream of getting an MVS or an AES and then getting a Neo Geo flashcard and shoving that in that bad boy and just calling it a day because AES games and MVS games are pretty crazy price wise.
Yeah, actually, it's funny you said that because I actually just got my MVS in yesterday.
Nice.
Yeah, and actually, the flash card for those is like $500.
I know, it's insane.
Yeah, I just refuse to pay that. There's actually a guy in China who will make a customized bootleg card of an MVS, and I'd just rather pay that guy, to be honest. Make me like an $80 card.
Isn't the funny thing about it though? I've heard mixed reception on this. Chat can weigh in here. Is that you can also buy these just massive bootleg cards for the MVS and AES, and they're cheaper than the flash cards. They probably don't run as well, but
the 161 and one.
Yeah, like the one trillion games in one that you can shove in there. People have said that's not a good idea to buy, but I'd be worth. Have you tried it?
I actually have a friend who has one, and it works great. So
that's all you need then. Just mix, because there's only so many games on the MVS. I mean, it's not like the PS2 or something.
Right. So for me, I got the 161 and one, and I'm into shmups. So really, the only things that were missing from the 161 that you'd really want to play if you weren't into like fighting games is like Ironclad and the Storm Troopers, I want to say it's called, or something.
Oh, Shock Troopers.
Shock Troopers.
That's a great game.
It's not a shmup, but it's it's a damn good game.
Yeah, it's like a run and gun type game, but overhead. I like it a lot. That's a cool game.
Yeah. So if you like, if you don't like fighters or whatever, then getting the 161 and one plus those 2 bootleg games from China for $80 each, it's much less than the $500 price tag of the other thing.
Yeah, I remember when Analog way back in the day were selling consoleized MVSs, and this is before they became as successful as a company as they are now. And I remember because they started off, I don't know if people remember, doing like the most ridiculous bootleg console mods that they would sell for insanely inflated prices. Like I think they did like a solid gold NES or some crap like that, like gold plated NES or something. I mean, they were ridiculous, but I was like, okay, maybe I'll get this. Then I checked the price. I'm like, geez, I can't remember how much it was, but it was a lot of money. And I was like, well, I might as well just buy the hardware myself and get out the saw and the sander and just make it myself at this point.
Right. Yeah, the analog devices are just all wicked overpriced. Like I'd rather just get a Mister or something like that.
I know. I think their best product they ever made so far was the Super NT, because I think that's when they decided, okay, let's do this for real now, like make something that's more commercially viable for more people. I almost bought an NT actually because I loved how it had the cartridge slot and everything, and I was gonna get one, but it didn't have analog output, and I was like, ooh, so sure
that's
about
interesting.
It. Yeah, it doesn't have so you have to buy analog output, and it's like $80. I was like, when you start pricing that, it's just a lot of money again. So I was like, so then I went the Mister route, and now it's like, okay, I'm staying on the Mister now.
Yeah, they're actually making an analog duo for the PC Engine Duo, and it's gonna have a CD drive, so that looked
Yeah.
pretty interesting to me. But and here's one thing that they do. So like one thing that really sketches me out about analog is that they have like they sometimes have attractive prices. Like the analog duo is $200, like the retail price.
Hmm.
But what they're gonna do is they're gonna drop like a very limited amount. So only like a
Oh
few
my
people will get
gosh,
that.
you're right. I forget about that. It's like
Yeah, and then they'll
impossible
go
to
on
buy
eBay.
anything of theirs.
Yeah, and then they'll go on eBay and pretend to be an upseller, but they're really just trying to get a higher price
Oh
on their own device.
shit. Is that true? That is
I'm,
crazy.
I mean, don't quote me, but let's not pretend here.
Well, I always wonder about that with even the larger companies. Yeah, I don't know
Yeah.
about like
So
Analog did that with the Game Boy thing, right? Where they dropped the Game Boy, and I was like, I might want to get that, but it's like 12. They made 12 of them or something. Not actually, but they made so little of them. I can never even buy one, even if I wanted to.
right, and so this is what this is. So this is the biggest red flag for me is when you go to the website and they'll look for they'll tell you, oh, put in your email and we'll give you the details or whatever when it drops. And that's the biggest red flag, because what they're really doing is farming to see how many people are interested in buying their product.
Yeah.
So if it's not a good amount of attention, then they'll do that sketchy eBay stuff where they mark up the price huge because they know it's only going to be like a small amount of people buying it. So they're trying to like juice them for the most amount of money. But
Well, yeah.
anyways,
And I've always wondered why Nintendo did this sort of stuff too with their mini consoles and everything. Like I think it's mostly for publicity, right? Because, and this is before everyone says pandemic. Nintendo was doing this way before the pandemic. They were doing this with the Nintendo Mini and the Super Nintendo Mini or whatever it was, where I was like, okay, I'll go ahead and buy one of these for my brother just for the novelty of it. And I couldn't get one. And then they were marked up to insane prices and people were scalping them and beating each other in the street over them. So I thought, I just can't take part in this.
yeah, I remember that. That was brutal.
But anyway, so we were talking about all these systems. So let's get into one of my favorite uses of modded systems, and one that I think companies are starting to pick up on now with the Analog, for instance. They use FPGA, which is cool, but like Nintendo with the Nintendo Mini and the Super Nintendo Mini, which is running emulators on consoles that aren't supposed to be running emulators, which is that's the main reason I actually modded consoles for a very long time, was because of that, because especially with handhelds, that's actually a really useful feature to have. And then also I modded my PS3 to run an insane amount of emulators on it for some reason. Oh, because back in the day, it was easier to connect it up to CRTs and stuff than my computer could.
Yeah, the PS3 is an awesome emulation device. Like
Yeah.
once you get the firmware in there.
You could even run retro. You know, the RetroArch, the UI for RetroArch is based off the PS3 because RetroArch sort of began life. One of its main things was being on the PS3.
Oh, on the PS3. I thought it started with PSP. I'm probably wrong. I don't know.
Well, it's
But,
in that it's in there somewhere. Yeah, because they have the PSP UI one too, and I remember running it on the PSP too. But you know the front end, that's they might have replaced it recently, but the front end for years was the PS3 front end.
It was, yeah. I remember.
Which I really liked. I still use that actually.
I love that front end. It's great. When they sort of like modified that a little and released the PS4 graphic interface, I was very impressed with that because it's very simple and it's easy to use. And then when they went to PS5, I don't know if you've used a PS5, but it is awful. It's a mess. I literally sold my PS5 because I was so annoyed with it. Like,
no, we'll have to talk about the PS5 at the end when we go through all the consoles. I don't have a PS5 and I probably won't get one for a very long time for a really funny reason, but I'll leave you all in suspense what that is. So let's go through now. Okay, so we got our consoles, we got our mods. Let's do a little bit of personal history here. What was the first time you ever modded a console and why?
First time I ever modded a console. That's a good question. The PSP, I think it was. And
nice.
Yeah, and actually, I don't know if anybody remembers when the PSP came out. They basically broke that like right on the drop. Like
Yes,
I
I
want to
remember
say it was
that.
like the same.
I remember
Yeah, it
that.
was like the same week. Yeah, and it was very easy to do. Uh, and so I think that was the first thing I modded. But it,
Yeah, the poor PSP did not have a kind security system. People destroyed that poor thing.
yeah, and it was I love the PSP. To this day, I use the thing.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite handhelds for a very long time. And that's funny. So my first console modding experience, the first one I ever encountered in the wild, wasn't actually my own. It was my friend's Xbox, and he had a modded Xbox, and that was the first time I ever encountered a modded Xbox. And that's actually where I learned about input lag, because we were playing the SNES emulator on that, and I didn't know what input lag was, and I was playing, and I'm like, something ain't right. Something's weird about the game. It feels funny. Yeah, and that's actually how I learned about input lag, was on the Xbox. But the funny thing is I didn't get the Xbox mod because that was kind of fairly early on, and it was one of those ones where it was like he didn't mod it himself, but his brother's friend's neighbor who worked with that guy once, who takes out his laundry, whatever, like the connection of acquaintances to the guy who actually mod stuff was so long. I was like, this is kind of sketch. And then the guy who modded it, he must have been a shitty modder, like looking back on it now, because his Xbox had all these issues. Like it would die, it would fail the launch, it couldn't run things. I mean,
Yeah,
it had a lot of
there
issues.
was so many. Yeah, there was so many places you could go wrong modding an original Xbox. Like it was
Yeah.
actually like there was many ways they did it that you could brick your Xbox, and so
Yeah.
it was pretty dangerous if you know what you're doing.
Yeah, that's why
But,
I never ended up doing it. But it was cool, and it could run N64 games. I remember that being pretty impressive.
I love the original Xbox. I think it's a fantastic machine for emulating stuff. I used it for years and years until somebody stole it.
It's how it goes, right?
Oh yeah. What was I gonna say? Yeah, but once you got the so like it has a hard drive and a PATA hard drive, not like a SATA one we use today, like which is
Yeah.
just like the flat ribbon cable. And I remember like once you do mod it, you can actually take a flash of the hard drive, and then from there it's pretty straightforward. If you want to mod like an infinite amount of Xboxes, you just plug that thing right in and then flash it. It's easy. But if you can't get to that point, you're probably gonna mess up your Xbox pretty bad.
Yeah. That mod was not a good job. But I still got a taste of it. And so that kind of was my first introduction to what console modding was. And then my very first own personal mod was the PSP, like yourself, because it was so damn easy. I mean,
Right.
And it was a handheld, and I was a little bit of a snot about modding in the early days when I was like 14. So you're allowed to be a snot about things when you're 14. That's my opinion.
Well, like I think mods really got like their first bad like introduction to the world, because I remember on the original Xbox, people would really mod their Xbox to cheat online, and so it like
shit, yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, like Halo 2 especially was really brutal with the mods. Like people were really trying to like grind up their levels.
Yeah, and I ran into that on the PS3 so much with Call of Duty. People flying in the air and flying under the ground and
Yeah, World
all
of
that
War.
stuff. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you know it. So that was really frustrating.
But yeah, like that's one thing. Like I'm totally all cool with modding, 100%, unless you're cheating online. That makes
Yeah.
you a piece of shit.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, you basically, it's actually, the big thing about it is, people, I'm not super comfortable sometimes with like, pirating things. It's a circumstance type thing, right? Where like new games come out and you're straight up pirating them. That feels a little grimy. But I would say the clear cut moral issue for me is when people cheat online with modding. And the reason for it is, you're not just ruining your own game, you're actually ruining hundreds of other people's games that they bought. Like, so these people bought the game, they're just some kid in Iowa. He's like coming home after school, he's so excited to play. It's like maybe he has a shitty home life, whatever, and he's going to go play, and about half of his time he's just going to not be able to play because there's people modding the crap out of the game and killing him on spawn and stuff. I've always been, yeah, that's shitty because it doesn't just ruin your experience. It literally ruins everyone else's experience too.
Right, yeah, and actually, I see Freakface commented that's why you stopped playing World at War, and it really did get that bad because
Oh,
World
it
at
was
War
bad.
was also my favorite. Yeah, and actually, it was so bad that I went. So it's the most bizarre thing I've ever seen in the modding scene or anything. I joined the server in PS3 on World at War. You don't manually pick the server; they just stick you in
Yeah,
one.
they just throw you in it.
Yeah, and this whole server was so modded out that for some reason, whatever they did, it's the mod stuck to my system. Like they
Oh my
somehow
god.
installed like some sort of mod on my system to where like when I played, if you walk up to the wall, you could see through the wall. Like it was so bizarre. I've never seen anything like it. I
Wow.
have no idea how it was done. Um, and it ruined it for me because I was like, I'm not a cheater. I'm not doing this. Like that was literally the last game I played
Plus,
in World
who
at War.
knows? You could get your ass banned or something eventually.
Right, and it was just the most bizarre thing. Like I still to this day have no idea how they did that. But
Yeah. Luis is saying online gaming is toxic anyways. I agreed. My way around this was,
mhm.
because I played World at War too, was I'd go through and manually mute every single person every time. I think at one point they introduced like you could just mute everyone on default or whatever. But I remember back in the day going through muting everyone one by one, so I could just play without having to hear people cry and yell at you and all this stuff.
Yeah, it can be really toxic because a lot of people have their egos wrapped up in it, and like I played FPSs for a long time, and a lot of people like since they have their egos so wrapped up, a lot of the good players you meet will be either jealous that you did something good or like
Assholes.
it's
Yeah.
toxic
It's
overall.
Well, the other thing too is people don't talk about is like people being predators online through gaming. I mean, that is such a popular avenue for that, and people, and like the games people target. Like I remember my younger brother, a dude, like I didn't want him playing. I kept telling him, if you play, you can't use a mic and you can't have your voice chat on. Of course, he was like 12 at the time. Eventually, they stopped listening to you. Whatever, I'll do what I want. And some guy scammed him and got him to somehow give him a bunch of money online, over the phone, like through credit cards and shit like that. Like,
Mm.
yeah, yeah. I, this
Yeah,
is my boomer side coming out. But
Little
yeah,
Big Planet's awesome, by the way.
yeah.
Below comments.
Another reason I'm not a big fan of like that style of like World at War style gaming and stuff with that, or like Fortnite and all that sort of stuff. It's just the grind that goes on in those games online.
Yeah,
Not
another
good.
thing is the way people treat girls. Like as soon as you hear a girl's voice in there, everybody's at well, like not everybody, obviously, you can't generalize like that, but you'll see people's like whole demeanor change when there's a girl in there, and it can be very
Oh my
negative.
gosh, that's
And it like I've had many female friends online, and just to see like people treat the whole party different because there's a girl in there is just it's really toxic.
Oh yeah. See, the problem, with me is I have a blanket policy across the board. Is like I never play with voice chat on, like with strangers and shit. Never play with voice chat on. Never hear people. Like I mute everyone, silence everyone. So that would have been my advice: is just mute everyone, silence everyone. But I get if you want to get on and be social with people, that would be a complete freaking nightmare, and I have no solution for that.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the handheld modding scene. So we got our Vitas, we got them locked up, we got them jailbroken pretty quickly. The first thing that I did was I started installing emulators, and so I went ahead and installed the SNES emulator, which kind of worked on the PSP. Some games like Super Mario RPG and like the more heavy ones, you'd have to put on frame skip to get it to work.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But other games like
Actually,
Super Mario World, I think it ran pretty well. And then the later iterations of the emulators on there would get more and more efficient. So probably these days, I wouldn't be surprised if you could run RPG full speed or something now. Because they've been attacking those emulators, making them more and more efficient over the years.
yeah, I'm super impressed with the people who make the emulators. They're so smart.
Yeah,
Um,
it's also insane how dedicated they are too.
it is. Actually, I always wonder about that. Like as soon as it seems like as soon as a console drops, like these people are working on this stuff, and I'm just like, geez, like they're so motivated.
Yeah. Well, I've read a little article a long time ago about it. And some of these people are some people are just hobbyists and they love to do it as a hobby. But I also read that some of these people literally do work in the field basically, and they do this on the side just to be, I guess, little shits or something. Get back at their bosses.
Yeah, I heard that too.
Which is like you get, but imagine though, you go, let's say you're working at this gaming company like Sony or whatever, and they fire you, maybe they treat you like shit, and you're like, you know what, screw you, Sony, I got plans for you now.
That reminds me, actually, Squaresoft is known for deleting like every piece of their games so that the only thing that exists is the disc.
I know, what the hell is with that? You know, a lot of developers do this, and I've never understood why they do that, because they put themselves in a shitty situation later on if they ever want to re-release it or report it or remaster it. Some of those games they just can't, or they have to like hire some kind of crazy team to like reverse engineer the game again or something.
You would think they would just like stick a hard drive in a vault instead, like.
Yeah, but the thing is I would love to say, oh, it's Square being retarded, but so many of these companies do it. It's not just Square. Like these Japanese developers, I don't know what they must think hard drive space is sacred or something. They'll just throw out their source code all the time. Like they did that with Ninja Gaiden 2. Ninja Gaiden 2. Source code gone. That's why people are wondering why isn't it in the collection, the 360 version? The source code's gone. They threw it away. I can't understand it. I cannot. They had to
reconstruct the entirety of Final Fantasy VII for the PC version over like the console version. Yeah. Because of that, because they deleted the source code.
I almost wonder if it's like a cultural sort of thing, like a Mandela, where they make those monks spend years or however long they do it making one and then they wipe it out. I wonder if there's like some kind of Japanese cultural thing where they, after they complete the game and release it, they all sit around together and they're like, we all will hit delete together and like delete the code together. I don't know what. I doubt that's what really happens, but it's really crazy how commonly this occurs with Japanese games. It's much less common with Western games, but Japanese games, there's something there why they keep throwing their source code out.
Yeah, it's bizarre. I think they're just paranoid about security or whatever.
Piracy. Yeah. Who knows? Yeah, that might be it. Because Japan and piracy and modding actually is a whole ball of wax, because they crack down on that shit. Like, no, they're really strict about it.
Yeah, and they have some really intelligent underground modders in Japan. There's a guy named Dojin Dance. I suggest y'all check him out. It's Doujin Dance. He makes console mods for like just about everything, and sometimes he'll 3D print parts so that you get like a really clean looking
nice
like RGB mod. Yeah.
Well, not too long ago, didn't they pass a law in Japan where you cannot sell modded stuff anymore? Like it's a crime. You'll get your ass fined or in jail for like the old business of people modding people's 360s or selling modded systems to people, which in itself is not illegal as long as there's not software on there or whatever.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of it. And it's a huge problem with shmups actually, because if, for instance, in the live shmup events from Japan, like Shmup Mania, which are really cool, but they don't allow you to play on emulation. And so,
oh, wow.
So I had to play Guange in it. Well, I wanted to play Guange in it, but I had to play the 360 port, which is missing slowdown, so it's actually harder than playing the actual regular game. And so that I had to train. It was like training for an extra mode or something, like a different mode of the game, because it removes. There's no slowdown.
Yeah, so like it's funny you brought that up, because I've been trying to get my hands on a Sorcerer Striker PCB, and because like I think there's only one port, right? I know you did a video on this and I watched it, but I forget the exact details.
The Maho, the Daisukuzen, right?
Yeah, exactly.
On PS4, that's a great port.
It's a good port. Okay.
Oh yeah, it's by M2. It's one of the best ports around. It's a fantastic port.
Oh, okay. I'll probably just get that then.
Yeah.
Because I was like finding the PCB, like I literally couldn't find it for a long time. Somebody just posted it up, and I want to say it's something ridiculous, like $2 or $3 grand.
Yeah, I know. Oh no, I definitely recommend that port by M2 Shot Triggers. It's really good, and they are very thorough with their porting jobs. The slowdown is just right. They have save states. They're the gold standard.
What's the input like?
It's very good. I haven't rechecked it, but all their other ports actually have input latency reduction. And so with the Ketsui port on PS4, that's 2 frames of lag. That's the same as the PCB, which is crazy. Same thing.
Oh, that's incredible.
And the Garega port on the PS4, it's now 3 frames of lag. I believe that is actually faster than the PCB. From what I understand, most people kind of guess that. I don't have the PCB, otherwise I'll test it, but most people guess it's around 4 frames. So the port on the PS4 is actually more responsive, and it has the bullet changing colors, which is really big deal to me. Their ports are fantastic. So I would definitely recommend. I would definitely recommend at least checking out the Makuza Sorcerer Striker port, because it's very good.
Yeah, I definitely will, because I just prefer not to spend $2,000-$3,000 to play one game.
Yeah.
But yeah, on the Saturn, that's one thing that really drives me up a wall. So the Saturn has perfect ports for like a lot of these shoot 'em ups, but
not all though. Not all.
The problem is, what's that?
Not all though. Some of them are bad.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I'm not like, I don't know like all the details, but I do know that when you try to play them, so much of the time the screen will be cut off. And that just irks the hell out of me.
Oh, why?
Enemies or bullets off the screen.
Why is the screen cut off?
I'm not too sure, but it's native. Like, it's literally like that's how the Saturn outputs it.
Oh wow, that's crazy. Have you tried running it through an OSSC?
Oh yeah, like I have it on S-Video, and actually I some of these games I want to say I can't tell you that I've been playing Cheyenne Ryu, Batsugan, Metal Garega. I couldn't tell you exactly which ones are cut off, but I want to say like 70% plus are cut off. And I actually like went onto YouTube because I was like, is this my inputs? So I went onto YouTube and checked all the videos, and they're all cut off. It's really how it is.
Wow, that's crazy. So I was playing Radiant Silvergun on the Saturn, but Radiant Silvergun was sort of just made for the Saturn, so
it's a native one.
It's almost a stretch to call it a port, but yeah, I mean that runs fantastic. I actually have tried a few different games on the Saturn. The Garega port on the Saturn is very good, from what I understand. For years, it was like the way to play Garega on console, except PS4 port is just better. So just go with the PS4 port now. And then the port to avoid is definitely the Donpachi port. That port is trash. It's garbage.
On Saturn?
Yes. It's not even. I think my conspiracy theories, people think I'm, being paranoid. I think they intentionally made it bad. I think they intentionally messed it up because they do things to change the game like drastically. It is a very different game than the arcade mode. Some of the sprites are different and stuff because it's not like a 1-to-1. Like they redrew some of the sprites and everything. I would forgive that, but they broke the scoring system of the game, and it's so fundamentally broken that I have to believe either the people porting it are idiots, like complete idiots, or they did it on purpose to prevent people from just playing the Saturn port and they still have to go play the arcade version, because the chaining meter, it's like the main way you score in the game is through your chaining combos. On the Saturn port is busted. It does not work. It runs down too fast. It'd be like if you're playing Street Fighter and you go to do a low forward into an uppercut or into a fireball and it doesn't combo anymore. It just doesn't work. That's how broken it is. I mean, it's fundamentally broken. And then they also went in and they like changed some of the patterns and they like removed some of the glitches and save spots, and it's like a completely different game. And then it runs too fast. It's not a good port. It's bad. Yeah. It's not good. Which is unfortunate, but they also broke the PS1 port. So I think, okay, how do you break this many ports of the game accidentally? Because the PS1 port has the same chaining issue as well. The chains don't work. It runs too fast. The PS1 is more accurate. The PS1's more accurate, but the chaining is still broken in it. So I think it's intentional. I think Cave told them, no, we don't want people practicing the console, because the console ports came out not that far after the arcade version. I think Cave told them, listen, we want our super players playing the arcade version, so these better not be perfect. better get these wrong.
That's interesting.
Because
Yeah, I
also
wouldn't
they
put it
did
past
a
them.
literal contest with Dodonpachi super players on these ports. So you would think at some point during the contest, the super players would turn to the developers and be like, bro. Because a lot of these players, too, were literal playtesters for Cave. So I got a lot of evidence for this conspiracy theory. But I'm pretty sure Cave said, break these ports. We do not want them to work correctly. But they're not good. So don't spend hundreds of dollars for Dodonpachi on the Saturn or PS1 because it's not good.
Noted.
That's my spiel on that. But speaking of
Yeah,
Saturn,
actually-
that's actually a great segue into Saturn modding because I have my Saturn modded, and I remember for years that was such a big deal. It's like, ooh, the unbreakable Saturn. No one can get through its defenses. It's unparalleled, you know. And then this one dude made this. I don't know if you remember. This one dude made this massive video. It was like a doctoral dissertation or something on how he jailbroke the Saturn by going through the back port or something or other. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, I do.
And then I was like, bro, why don't you just use the firmware exploit that's like basic? And I never got it because for spoiler alert for people who don't know, it's actually really easy to mod a Saturn. So I don't get all the hype around the Saturn being so unmoddable and unbreakable and all that sort of stuff.
The action replay.
Yeah, the action replay mod where what's the firmware? I forget the name of the firmware.
What is it?
I forget.
can't
Pseudo
remember
Saturn.
off the
It's
top
called
of
Pseudo Saturn. That's what it's called.
Pseudo Saturn and Pseudo Kai.
Yes.
Right.
I remember this wasn't Pseudo Saturn. This guy did this whole video on. He was like doing something with the back port and all this sort of stuff. And I remember watching that video and being like, why don't you just use Pseudo Saturn? I don't get it. Maybe there's some other sort of special modding involved, but the way it works is I actually did it myself, where you take a disc, you open up your Saturn, like you take off the top of your Saturn, you put in your action replay, you put in a real Saturn disc, you get a cheap one, of course, that way, because they're super expensive, and then you just hot swap it with another disc. It's like one of the easiest mods I've ever done in my life. So I don't understand the hype that was around the Saturn, how unbreakable it was, and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, that reminds me. There's actually for those of you who have used the action replay and you see how it works with like the burn discs, there's actually a fairly new exploit on the PlayStation 1 that's pretty much the same thing but with a memory card.
I got it. I went and got it. I went and bought.
Same.
Oh my gosh. Okay, hold on. I'm gonna turn off my camera because I'm gonna actually stand up and grab my PS1. 1 second. Go ahead. Go ahead and what you were saying.
Yeah, I was gonna say I actually figured that out, and if you have like a free McBoot on PlayStation 2, you can do it really easily. With like I think you just put the little flash on the USB and like stick it in there. But it actually is it has to be native to your, what do you call it? To your PlayStation revision.
Yes. What's inside there? Uh-oh. You know what my favorite thing?
That one. Yeah.
You know what my favorite thing to do is to burn games on Sony CDs. I make a point of doing that with all my burned games on the PS1 and PS2. Make sure they're Sony branded just to make it consistent, right? This is officially licensed. This is an officially licensed Sony disc. So, but yeah, I actually went and bought a PS1 because of this mod. Because for years, I was like, I'm not going to get a PS1 because I don't feel like mod shipping it. I have a story about the mod chip here soon enough on my PS2, but I had some bad experiences with mod chips. I was like, I don't feel like mod shipping it. I can kind of do it on the PS2, sort of through the PS2's backwards compatibility. And then this came out, Tony Hawk's, yeah. And at first I was like, oh crap, I have to go buy a copy of Tony Hawk. And I was going around to all the local like pawn shops, like, you got Tony Hawk? You got Tony Hawk? And then I went ahead and read about it, and it's like, yeah, if you have free McBoot on your PS2, you don't even need Tony Hawk. You can just install it onto your PS1 memory card on your PS2. So it's my favorite mod because it's like a family tree of mods. You go from your free McBoot on your PS2 and you put it on your PS1 and mod your PS1 with it. It's really cool.
Yeah. Someone in the comments said he's looking for a handheld that is made well.
Vita.
I recommend the Anbernic series from China. They're like, I want to say it's called like the 250
Oh, do you have it?
350M, something like that.
Show
Yeah, I
us.
got
Show
one right
us.
here.
Oh,
Yeah.
snap. So, was
And
this the one you were saying that was laggy?
this one's not so bad. However, I want to say this. What's this thing called? The Pocket Go S30.
Yes.
The gray one. This one's really bad input lag. Like,
Damn.
if you're trying to play an action game, just beware of that. And the screen resolution's not that great. I want to say it's like 240, 240, and these ones right here you can get in 480. I want to say it's the 350M or something like that. I don't remember the exact model names, but the higher resolution of the screen really makes a big difference. Even if you're playing something that plays in 240, for some reason it's just crystal clear on this device compared to the gray one, which is the S30.
Yeah. Myself, my go-to for years and years until the Switch came out was the Vita. The Vita is such a beast. Did you ever mod your Vita?
Yeah, and actually, like everybody asked, I've been talking about it online. My PS Vita after I modded it was incredibly unreliable. Like crashes, like yeah, the frame rate slows down, and like I just think it's maybe my processor because processors aren't made all the same,
Right,
like, across any device, and I'm pretty sure that mine just has a particularly weak processor. Because like once
damn.
like things get graphically intense, that's when it crashes or gets a little
That's
wonky.
crazy. So my Vita, I was actually deep into Vita emulation, like following along over the years, like as changes came out. I could give you like the whole history of the Vita. It was like a whole process of, yeah, I have the OLED Vita as well. It was
Nice.
crazy, the evolution of that thing modding. I remember I did one of the very first mods on it where you had to like buy exploited games and you had to like do all these crazy things with your Wi-Fi and all this kind of stuff. And I mean, I got my Vita jailbroken when it was super hard to get it jailbroken, and I was showing it off to everyone. I'd be like, yeah, but it was my favorite system over the years because it has a PSP inside it, so you can do everything the PSP can do, but better. It can run the PSP emulators, but better. It's just such a beast. Yeah, I loved my Vita. I'm a huge Vita fan. Should probably go grab it, but I'm too lazy.
Yeah, that OLED must look crystal clear.
Yeah, it's great. It's I think handheld wise, it's the best feeling handheld I've ever done. The D-pad on the Vita is fantastic. I never understood why they didn't put that D-pad in a bigger version on the PS4 controller. I never got that. Like, why did they develop such a badass D-pad for the Vita and then never use it on their PS4 controllers? Because it's so much better than the PS4's D-pad. It has like that little click to it, but I love the Vita's controls. It feels so good. I actually cleared legit games on the Vita. Like I went through and beat Metal Slug and Metal Slug 2 and Metal Slug X.
The joysticks feel
on
so
the Vita.
brittle though.
Oh, joysticks suck. Yeah, those suck. But the D-pad is where it is at. That D-pad is fantastic.
Yeah, for sure.
So if you're doing any 2D gaming and handheld, I still think the Vita. Well, the Switch with the Hori mods is really good too, though. But the Vita for years was my go-to, and I practiced shmups and stuff on, of course, horizontal ones, because vertical shmups on the Vita were hilarious. Because the screen's like you're like reading a stamp as you're playing. It's just way too tiny. But yeah, the Vita is one of my favorite console mods, and I did it mostly for emulators. The funny thing about the Vita is it has like very few actual games on it that are like Vita games that are that good. Like its library is pretty meh. But because
that's true, I like the E series.
But because it can play PS1 and PSP, it's got a huge library there because you can run PS1 games on it too, natively.
Right, same with PSP.
Yeah, because it has a PSP inside it, so you can run the PS1 games inside the PSP, inside the Vita. It's like a Sony sandwich. They're all in there.
Like a Russian doll.
Yeah, exactly. It's a Russian doll of Sony consoles, starring Vita, PSP, then PS1 at the very end. So what is your personal favorite mod that you have?
I don't know what the heck I did with it. Probably my Game Boy Advance.
Oh, snap.
Yeah, because I don't know if anybody's seen this, but you can put an IPS screen in it. And,
yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, it's kind of a pain. It's got a very small solder joints, but once you get it done, the IPS screen looks crystal clear. It's backlit. It's beautiful. And like that's another thing is like Game Boy Advance is really hard to emulate. So
yeah, true.
So a lot of the time you won't get a very good experience, but when you're using an actual hardware with a crystal clear like modern screen, it's just beautiful. Like the colors pop. It's awesome. So that's definitely my favorite mod. I actually modded mine with a custom rechargeable battery mod. It's a little more involved. Like you need like a diode to reduce the voltage.
Oh yeah. That's when you're getting deep. When you start pulling in like diodes and resistors and all that stuff. That's when it gets good. Right. For years, what I was trying to do was I couldn't find anyone. I'm sure this is possible, but I couldn't find like a guide or a kit to this. Is I wanted to overclock the crap out of my original Game Boy so I could play Pokemon on it in 3x speed. Because whenever I play Pokemon in emulators, I played at like 3x speed. The game's more fun that way. And so I was like, wouldn't it be cool if I could get my Game Boy to run it that fast? Because there was something about you could overclock your Game Boy here and there, but I could never find an overclock that fast, unfortunately.
Yeah, they actually make a actually after I modded mine, I realized they made a mod that'll make it'll overclock your Game Boy Advance so that you can do like 1.5 times fast forward or whatever. So that might be up your alley.
Oh, nice. Yeah, someone in the comment was talking about 3DS. We'll have to talk about that because I have a modded 3DS too, and that's a lot of fun.
Same. The 3DS is awesome.
What model do you have?
I have the big 3DS XL.
Me too. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love the damn thing. I don't use it enough.
What I love about the XL and the 3DS model, the 3DSs, and I guess Nintendo gave up on this design, but how they fold in. They fold in on themselves. I love that. I don't know. I guess because the Switch, they're going for something different, but I really love. I hope someone brings that back. The folding thing where you can fold it. It works so well. Yeah, the 3DS, that and the Vita, they're a close competition. Which one I like better? But the 3DS is a beast too. Once you get it modded. Yeah.
Let me see if I can find the Game Boy Advance just real quick.
Okay. So while he's checking out the Game Boy Advance, we're getting a little bit of an echo. Here. So while he's looking for his, I think he's got it. Here's what we'll do. Okay. So you guys won't hear that echo anymore. So another thing that I wanted to talk about while he's looking for that is the subject of piracy and of the Nintendo Switch and the sort of harsh treatment Nintendo has given to people who run homebrew on the Nintendo Switch, which ironically sort of encourages piracy in a weird way. So the way it works, for you that don't know, is the Nintendo Switch, if you jailbreak that bad boy, you can get it to run all kinds of really great emulators on it. However, if Nintendo catches you with any sort of firmware jailbreak on there, they will like permaban your ass and basically block out your Switch from ever being able to play like legally purchased games anymore. You can't play them online. And the problem that I mentioned before is that you can sometimes get in this weird firmware situation where you can't play games because the firmware isn't matching up correctly. So buying them physically doesn't always work either. And so, let me unmute you. And so the Nintendo Switch, I always recommend it, but I'm always recommend it cautiously for modding, because Nintendo catches a hint of a mod on your system, they're going to beat you with a stick, and it's going to be a nightmare. So I have my Switch modded, and I think if you want to get into Switch modding, I would get in now, because you're probably going to want to get those earlier models. And I think Nintendo is doing everything they can to obliterate those early models from existence. They do not want people with those early models because they're so exploitable. I have one, so I'm really happy. But protect your early models switches. But what I'm excited to do is when I get my the Switch, the real Switch Pro, whenever that comes out, then I can go full hog on the mods on my old Switch, right? And not have to worry about getting banned on it as much. But yeah, you can run RetroArch on the Switch, and you can run sort of a ShmupArch type experience on there. The only reason I didn't recommend it on my channel again is because if Nintendo bans you, I mean, you are locked out of everything, and you basically have to buy another Switch if you want to buy games moving forward. So it's a beast.
Yeah, I've never actually modded a Switch because I unfortunately updated mine past the mod.
Oh, you can still do it. It depends
really?
on what model. Do you have the early model Switches?
Yeah, it's the release day model.
Oh, you can do it. You can absolutely do it. It's super easy to, because the problem is Nintendo cannot firmware out that exploit because it's a hardware exploit on those early ones. With their, it has something to do with the graphics. There's like a graphics card exploit in there, and no matter what they do, they cannot lock you out of that. So usually what happens is when they update the firmware, it takes like maybe a week or two, and then the mod homebrew firmware updates along with it, and you can just mod it. like I've accidentally updated my Switch like 4 times. And so every time I have to reinstall the mod. But those early Switches, I don't think it's possible for Nintendo to ever lock you out completely.
That's great news.
I
kind of just assumed it was too late.
No, but the later ones, so the ones, because I think they patched this out in the later ones, I think. Like the later Switches, and then also the mini Switch thing. I think those might not be able to be jailbroken. I haven't looked into them. But the OG early release day Switches, those things are gold, because I don't think Nintendo can ever truly lock you out of them because of that hardware exploit.
Yeah, so I actually I grabbed my PC Engine. I don't know if anybody's ever seen this. This is the Japanese PC Engine. The CD thing goes here, which I actually have. But I wanted to show what the guy Dojin Dance's 3D printed RGB mod looks like.
Holy
and how
shit.
Professional.
That's impressive.
Yeah, right. I was super impressed with that. I just had to order from him because I was like, this is fantastic. Yeah, so I highly recommend Dojin Dance. Let me show you guys the screen, just how vibrant it is. Hold on, let me just show you guys when it turns on.
I love that model of the Game Boy Advance, by the way. People are really all about the SPs, but I like the OG models better. Like, I think they feel better in the hand than the SPs.
Yeah, this is absolutely my favorite. I don't really like the SP, although it has a nice screen. It has like a grid on it, which is pretty good. And it's backlit.
But the controls on that thing, I'm not a fan. It's like, I feel like Nintendo,
your hands will cramp up.
I think that Nintendo has been really weird with their D-pads over the years. People always say that Nintendo makes like the best D-pads or whatever. And it's like, at times they make fantastic D-pads, and then other times they make garbage D-pads. And people just kind of give them pass because they're Nintendo. But for instance, I don't know if you have the original DS, the gray model one. That thing has a fantastic D-pad on it. It's like one of the best Nintendo ever made. It's the old school gray DS. That it's like this massive D-pad, and it's more cross-like. You can play Ketsui on it. Like, it feels good to play Ketsui on that bad boy with that little D-pad, with that big D-pad. And then they swapped over to the 3DS, and the 3DS's D-pads are kind of they're not that great. And I was annoyed because I thought the 3DS Pro or 3DS XL would have a bigger D-pad in it, but it doesn't. It has the same D-pad as the regular 3DS. So, yeah, I think their D-pad game fell off, to be honest. I think it peaked on the DS and the Game Boy Advance, and then from there it kind of went downhill. Yeah. And the Switch is a nightmare. They didn't even try.
Awful. Yeah,
they're like, forget the D-pad.
I feel like the Switch was probably super expensive to develop, super expensive to build, and they were just trying to cut some corners here and there.
Well, I think what happened is Nintendo can kind of get a little bit Apple in the brain at times with the things they do, where they, they read Steve Jobs' autobiography and then they get all inspired. And so what they'll do is I swear I can visualize this meeting. They come in, and the engineers are sitting with whoever's in charge of the hardware design, and they're saying, okay, here's our mock-up. Here's the Joy-Cons. Here's the Joy-Con D-pad. Here's the joystick. Here's the joystick here. Here's the buttons. And then the genius sort of architect guy looks at it and he's like, it must be symmetrical. We want symmetry. Symmetry speaks to the mind. So the D-pad is not symmetrical with the buttons on the other side. See? In their inverses. So we want to make... It's like they got a little bit... I think they got a little bit uppity in their heads, because if you look at it, the thing about the Joy-Con that's so nifty is that it's the controller's the same, it's just upside down, right? So if you take the pieces off, which no one ever does, they would technically be the same, except one's the other direction than the other, and you could just flip them around. That's, I think, why they did it, is they wanted this symmetry, and they wanted this sort of niftiness of, oh, you could take them off in their own little controllers, but they forget that 90% of the time people are not going to be doing that, and they're going to be playing it like a regular handheld, and they need a damn D-pad. And so that's why I definitely recommend the Hori D-pad. That thing's fantastic. But I think that's why Nintendo did it, is because they had this whole design concept of they wanted the Switch halves to be the same. And who needs a D-pad, right? It's only a Nintendo console. People use D-pads on Nintendo consoles. Fool. That's my rant on this. That's my rant on the Switch Joy-Cons.
That reminds me of the Super Nintendo controller. Like, I'm not the biggest fan of the D-pad on that because it's so stiff.
Yeah, I don't dislike this Super Nintendo D-pad. And I've played a lot of Super Nintendo because I used to speedrun Super Metroid on that thing. And so I would actually have to like use it intensely, not just, casually to play it, because you'd have to do all these technical inputs on it and stuff. The thing about it is, I just think better D-pads came into existence afterward, but people are really fond of the feel of that original one.
Right.
I do think there are better D-pads out there.
That brings me to the PC Engine, and if any of you guys have ever used a PC Engine like natural controller, the original OEM controller, that thing will break your damn hands. It's so hard. It's so physically hard. Like you'll play for 5 minutes and be like, I'm done. I can't do it. So I actually modded a Super Nintendo controller to work on the PC Engine.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Let me see it.
Okay. So the next segment here. So my solution to this, by the way, for everyone is I play everything on arcade stick. So, I can do a little show and tell. Yeah. Boom. Yeah. The arcade stick with the mysterious invisible button. Ooh, so mysterious. I had to pay Warner Brothers so much money to get this invisible button just right. There you go, the invisible button. But so I just use my arcade stick for any 2D game ever. And I just throw it.
Beautiful.
And I throw it at every single console. So SNES, Super. I do a lot of that on the Mister now, thank God. But I used to actually use something called the undammed USB decoder, and I would literally mod the controller. I'd pad hack the controller, and then you can put it into the undammed, and then you could plug your 360 stick into it. So even before the Brooks and before the Mister, I was doing this where I was playing Super Nintendo games on arcade stick, like a real arcade stick, not their crappy little arcade sticks that you can buy. And so that's my solution for anything 2D related with controllers. I just play everything on arcade stick now.
Yeah, I actually just got my first arcade stick ever a couple days ago. This ghetto Eclipse stick. Oh my gosh!
What's that for?
What's that?
What's the arcade stick for? What system?
So it's for Saturn. I just got a Super Gun in that comes with Saturn ports, so I'll be able to use my like arcade PCBs with this joystick.
That is so weird. What Super Gun is that?
I know it's kind of ghetto. Like it was cheap. It was only like $20 for like 2 of them.
Oh wow. I'm just shocked to hear that someone would make a Super Gun with Saturn ports, because like what an obscure controller to use.
I know. I was so blown away by that.
I think it's because
so bizarre.
I think it's because people absolutely love the Saturn controller. the Saturn controller, like the D-pad on it, and it is very good. It is very good.
Actually,
so I think that's
sure.
probably why they did it. It's just hilarious.
Yeah.
They put that on there.
Well, I think actually, this is a little bit of conspiracy theory, but some guy made a zero delay Neo Geo to Saturn controller chip, and
yeah.
and I think the reason why that's possible is because Neo Geo and Sega work together to get a lot of their stuff like in sync, which is why you have so many arcade perfect ports on the Saturn.
Interesting.
So I think that's why, since the MVS has, or since the original Supergun design has Neo Geo ports on it, they use that, and then I think it's called the HAS, which is like the original Supergun design by some guy. I think the Chinese manufacturers copied his design like outright, and they stuck and they copied the design for the zero delay converter and stuck it in there, and so. It's kind of like a hack together
nightmare.
Supergun. Let me grab it.
Yes, I need to see this because I've never heard of this before.
Yeah, it's actually very well built, very well designed. It's impressive.
Is
for
it
something
is it a newer thing, or is this like an older Supergun?
This is brand new. It's the C-Box version 2. It just came out. I want to say this year. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that's true. Because they made two different versions. The first version's like very like cheap. It doesn't have like a voltage regulator or anything like that. But this one has a voltage regulator. It has tons of input and outputs rather.
That's
video
nice.
outputs. And actually, it has sort of a built-in OSSC where you'll plug in a SCART and you can run it backwards through into component. So it's pretty excellent.
Oh man. This thing, I laugh at this thing, and now it's starting to sound real legit. So I'm excited to see what he's got here. But yeah, so people are mentioning super guns. I have this super gun that everyone yells at me for owning. It's like called the Retro Fighter super gun, and everyone yells at me for owning it because apparently it has power supply issues and it might blow up your PCBs or something. But
yeah, that's probably based on the version 1 C-Box, which is what I was just talking about.
Yeah, and everyone yells at me for having it because they're like, it's gonna blow up your PCBs. But that's like, thing is all my PCBs are like pretty cheap bootlegs, and so I'm like, I'm not gonna buy another super gun. So if it blows them up, it blows them up. But
that's one thing I am so impressed with. A bootleg PCB is just incredible. Like you gotta be a damn genius of an engineer to bootleg an arcade PCB.
I know. My PGM itself is original, but PGMs are not expensive. So if it blows up my PGM, the super gun costs more than the PGM, so I'll just buy another PGM at that point.
Right. So I want to say I got the super gun with the power and everything for $150, which is, in my opinion, that's a steal. Like I think they're probably going to up the price if they get enough attention. Maybe they couldn't get enough sales and they dropped the price, but it's just, you can see, I don't know how good the picture quality will be.
I can see it clearly. So what kind of outputs are you working with here?
Yeah. So here we have component,
nice.
Composite, S-Video.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
That's really nice.
And that's only one side of it. So the other side has RGBS via RCA.
Nice.
It has SCART on the top. And the audio composite. Yeah. And then here we have the controller inputs. 2 Saturns and 2 Neo Geo.
Wow. That's impressive. Does it have flip it to the center? Does it have the arcade JAMA wiring in the middle? Usually they have
the JAMA's in the back.
Oh, okay. So it has JAMA.
Yeah,
what's cool about the Retro Fighters is that it has wiring. If you look in the center of the super gun, it has wiring, so you can like literally wire up your undammed right into it. Does yours have that? I'm curious.
Sorry, you can wire up what?
So if you look in the center of it, it has like input wiring in the center of it, where you can like plug in the literal wires for the inputs, or does it just use JAMA? Is there anything like that in the center?
Are you talking about the kick harness?
Let me see. Just look, flip up the center. I'm just curious to see in the center of it. It doesn't look like it has it. That's all right. I was just curious if it did or not. It has this.
Oh, you mean like so you can put like custom?
Yeah, yeah. It's like
yeah,
this
no, it doesn't have
custom input thing. It's actually really useful for using undammed decoder, but you could just use it through the JAMA. That would be fine.
Yeah, you could just wire it through that. It actually has the kick harness inputs right here, so you can anything that uses a kick harness, you can use.
That's cool.
It converts those right into the controller. So, yeah.
That thing looks pretty legit.
Yeah, and it was so cheap. Like $150 for this, in my opinion, is an absolute steal. Like,
have you tried it out?
So no.
It might explode. You plug it in, and explode.
Right, I know I'm talking it up, but I have tested out the SCART output.
I'm sure it works.
Using it sort of like a I tried it on my MVS. It definitely works.
Oh, okay.
But the thing is, I don't have any games yet on the MVS to try it with. I'm still waiting for them.
Well, as long as you can see the MVS through it, then it works, right? So as long as you can see the MVS screen and everything and it boot up, then you know it works.
Yeah, it's crystal clear. It's very well built. It's like I said, I'm surprised it's so cheap. Yeah, happy with it. More than happy.
So my favorite console mod, we're talking about favorite console mods, and the one that I recommend to everyone, even though I didn't do the mod myself, which I've done almost all the mods myself, except this one, is the Xbox 360 mod. And I feel like that's almost kind of like a requirement if you're a shmup player, is to own a Xbox 360, and at least if you're not modding it, have it jailbroken so you can play region free, because some of those games are region locked, so you got to get the region free modding. And,
well, don't they have the dual boot now? Like right from Microsoft that lets you emulate stuff?
I have no idea. So it lets you.
Yeah, they have. I want to say it's called developer mode. They let you download a developer.
Oh
mode,
yeah, I remember that.
Which is I haven't actually done it myself, but I'm pretty sure it's sort of like a Linux-based operating system, like dual boot, so you can like boot it into that.
Yes. Yeah, I actually need to do that on my Xbox One X. I was just talking about the 360 where it can play because the problem is a lot of people were buying Japanese 360s, which are super expensive because there's certain.
Why is that?
Because certain shmups are region locked in Japan only on the 360.
Oh.
So if you want to, I can't remember which ones. I think Mushihime-sama HD, for example, is region locked to Japan only. Oh, Dodonpachi DOJ Black Label Plus, which isn't that great of a port, but still. If people want to play that, it's region locked to Japan only. And so the way I do it is I just have a modded 360. So it can just play everything, get around the region logging.
Right, yeah. I was super happy they came out with the Mushi Hime-sama Switch port.
Yeah,
because
it's really good.
Yeah.
So you were bringing up console mods. I wanted to bring up what are our biggest modding failures in the world of modding, because I've modded, we'll go through the modding history here in a minute here, but I've modded almost every single console, and I've had a few ones where it didn't turn out so good. One of them was a PS2 chip mod, and I knew it was really ambitious, so I have a bunch of PS2s over the years. Whenever I find one, I just buy it, and so I have like 3 PS2s, and then I experiment on them like a mad scientist. And I remember there's this one PS2 that came out, the very late slim model. I think it's like the 7000 or whatever it is, where you can't use...
Oh, yeah, 9000.
9000, yeah. You can't use free McBoot on it. And so you have to install a mod chip on it, theoretically. But you go to open it up, and I got the mod chip. The soldering points on this thing are so tiny. They're like the heads of pins. And I just have like a regular soldering iron, like a little bit above grade soldering iron, but I don't have like an industrial soldering iron with like the little microscopes and anything like that. I tried to install this mod chip. I ended up just murdering the PS2. It just died completely. I killed it. Like it won't power on anymore. So I had to throw it away, unfortunately, but that was probably my biggest modding fail. Is like I got a little bit big for my britches, because every other time I had managed to get the soldering. I'm fairly good at soldering, so I was like, I got this. But that one,
Yeah.
it did not go so well. So poor PS2 didn't make it.
Yeah. My worst one. Let me actually grab the PCB real quick.
Another one that I wanted to mention too is one of the biggest modding fails that I had. Oh, you're back. Let's see it.
Yeah. So well, I know this doesn't show much. This is a little custom made PCB by a guy on YouTube. What's his name? Let me see if it's on here. It's not on here. I can't remember his name. Damn it! I like to give this shout out because it's due here. It's a really complicated, and as you can see, these solder joints are tiny, right?
Yeah.
So this is actually the board you use to convert a normal Nintendo controller. It's a PC Engine, not a Super Nintendo one like I did.
Oh, okay.
But I was actually trying to change a Sega Genesis controller into PC Engine because I have these Sega Genesis controllers that have this really smooth D-pad. It's an aftermarket controller. But anyways, and these things are just so tiny that when you go to solder them, the solder will
it'll leak right onto the next
all
contact.
over the place. Like it'll lift up the resistors you put on it. It's a tiny chip that you have to put on there, and I was literally 99% done with the mod, and I go to fix one of the resistors and just and I don't know what the heck my this is why you should use an anti-static bracelet if you're trying to do anything major on anything, because there was some kind of charge going through my soldering iron. So when I touched my soldering iron down to finish the last little piece on it, it electrostatic discharged the computer inside.
Oh,
so,
it blew up your computer? Yeah,
you could hear it. It popped. It was insane. I was like, oh my goodness. So yeah, always wear an electrostatic bracelet.
Yeah.
If you're concerned.
Yeah, those look like tiny little contacts. The other big modding failure, I talked about this in our call, but it's too funny not to mention, is I got into my head, there was this website called RalphNet back in the day. I think it's still around, where you could sell all these he'd sell all these little converters and random things. And at the time, this was when the Wii Virtual Shop was really big. And so I made a little converter to get Super Nintendo controllers to work on GameCube. And I was like, he made that. And he sold it, and I bought it, and I played it, and I was like, oh, this is good, but it could be improved with this and that idea. And then I had a friend who was into electrical engineering, and I was feeling very entrepreneurial. So I called him and I said, listen, I have this idea, and I think we could make a lot of money. Let's make a little converter that can convert the Super Nintendo to work on the GameCube port, and we can get it to run on the Wii, and we can sell this, and people will really buy it because this was really hot at the time. Yeah, RalphNet, that's it. And so he's like, okay. And so I said, do you want to take a look and see if you're able to pull this off? And he just looks at the plug of the Super Nintendo controller. That's it. He just looks at the plug of the Super Nintendo and goes, oh yeah, a few gates here and there. Not a problem. Don't worry about it. I got this covered. It should be a really cheap little chip we can put together, a little breadboard chip or something. I was like, perfect. So I went ahead and ordered probably 100 Super Nintendo controllers off of eBay. I went and just mass ordered hundreds of, 100 or so Super Nintendo controllers, had this massive box of them. And then I come over to his place with the Super Nintendo controllers. I'm like, okay, let's do this. And he's like, all right. He opens the Super Nintendo controller, looks at it, he's like, I was not expecting this. I was like, what? And long story short, it turned out he could not figure out how to make that conversion work. And I ended up with 100 Super Nintendo controllers I had no idea what to do with. So I started just giving them away to people. And I still have a big closet full of Super Nintendo controllers. So that was my biggest failed entrepreneurial adventure, where I thought I could make a bunch of money selling these converters that never turned out to be. And I'm holding on. What I'm doing is I'm holding on to those Super Nintendo controllers that maybe one day I can resell them and make money just from selling them back, I guess, to people. But it cost me a lot of money. I probably spent about $200 on this little project.
Yeah. I was gonna say somebody mentioned Voltar's mods, and he does great mods too. I got a RGB mod from him, and he does a similar thing as Dojin Dance, where he has like he'll give you like the part to here. Let me show you. Yeah, so it ends up being really clean, the RGB mod that Voltar puts out.
Wow. What's that? What console is that?
This is the PC Engine Duo.
Nice.
I have a system card in here just because. It's this one's the Japanese model. They actually made an American model of this one too.
Oh, that looks awesome.
Yeah, I like the Japanese model because it has these purple accents on it, and it looks really cool.
Yeah, it looks really clean. I always like the way the PC Engine consoles look. They look simultaneously really clean and also insane. Like they pull that off.
Yeah, it actually kind of looks like a PS2 with similar size and everything.
Yeah.
The thing about PC engines, and you probably know this if anybody owns one, the PC engine itself is great. It's reliable. It's small, compact. But the CD add-on, once you add that, it just like drops in reliability.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
Like orders of magnitude. This one actually did not work when I got it. It was actually sold as a broken one on eBay. But for anybody that knows, the Duo, you basically have to so it has these surface mount capacitors, and they leak out battery acid all over the board.
Oh, jeez.
After a certain amount of time. And as you know, these are like, how old now? They were made in like 1990 or something like that. So basically all the devices that have surface mount capacitors, they're all leaking battery acid all over it. So you have to like wash the board, change the capacitors out. But usually it'll work pretty good after that. If anybody in the comments does order a PC Engine Duo, don't turn it on until you change the capacitors out.
Because what happens?
So if there's battery acid on it, there's a good chance that battery acid leaked into the legs of the CPU and or GPU, because they're right next to a few of the surface mounts, so once it leaks battery acid onto it, it can carry the voltage over and short your CPU or GPU. So you really want to open it up and clean it out. At the very least, clean it, like clean the board, but with like a little toothbrush and some alcohol. If you're not going to change the capacitors themselves, which I highly suggest you do, if it hasn't been recapped, because you could fry it.
Oh, that's why you cook it. I heard this insane suggestion. Maybe it works. Is you remember the red ring of death on the 360s? So
yeah,
I had someone tell me, and maybe you can confirm or deny this, you or the chat, that one way to repair this is that some of the red ring of death came from like bad solders. So you would
to overheat it.
Yeah, so you'd take even crazier. You would take your whatever it is, I guess your motherboard out or something like that, and you'd stick it in the oven. Have you heard this?
Yeah.
And you'd cook it.
Yeah.
Does that work?
Yeah. Well, I guess it could work. It's not something that I would particularly do.
I guess if it's dead though, I mean.
Well, here's what happens. It has this clamp called like the X clamp above the CPU, and it really has like a lot of pressure pulling it like in a clamp motion. And since it gets so hot, it warps the board and really makes like a bubble in the board, a small bubble. But so the idea of sticking it into the oven is to sort of like reduce that bubble down.
Yeah. Does that work?
I heard it works. I wouldn't try it myself. But...
Well, I have a 360 too. I have my own repair on the 360. It red rings, and I was like, I have a nice 360. Okay, that's all modded up, and I might pull it down off the shelf here. This is what I plan, but I have another 360, so I have two, and the other 360 is one someone gave me, and it has a tendency to red ring itself every now and again. One day it red ringed, and I just hit it. And it stops. And it went, whoop. We're okay. Just kidding, Mark. So I don't know if I recommend that either, but that was my method of fixing my red ring. Is I just smacked it and it worked again. I have no idea why that is.
Yeah. Cerberus brought up a great point. It is sort of a low budget reflow. There's actually another another mod where this is terrible. No, don't ever do this. But they would wrap their whole system in a towel, so it's that you're purposely overheating it so that it does the same thing. It reflows the
catch your house on fire while you're at it.
Yeah, my friend actually did it. Like, we spent a whole summer playing Halo 3, and he had a Xbox 360, and it had red rings or whatever. And he's like, "Oh no, it does this all the time. Don't worry about it. I'll be right back." And he fucking plugged it in, he put it on for 20 minutes or whatever. And
did it
he
work?
Came back and it worked. I was like, "All right."
I know the red rings are so silly. I actually had, this is another huge mod failure, but it was not my fault this time around. And this is the danger of having people work on mods for you. So back in the PS3 days, now I think you can just jailbreak PS3s in an afternoon. It's not, it dropped.
Okay. Are we still alive? Or?
Yes, we're still alive. Sometimes this happens, but YouTube will go through and fix it, and I'll fix it in editing. But anyway, what I was saying is that I went ahead and I bought this PS3. It was the Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns of the Patriots special PS3, and I wanted to mod it. I just wanted to mod everything at the point, everything I bought, but it was on too high of a firmware to mod. And so the old school way of fixing this issue was you had to do this really complicated downgrade process. I don't know if you remember that, where you downgrade your PS3 to the correct firmware. And I was worn out. This was just after I blew up my PS2 and killed it. So I was like, I don't want to kill this poor PS3. So I'll send it into a professional modder to downgrade it. That's all I'm asking. Just downgrade it for me and I'll take care of the rest. So I sent him to downgrade it. He did downgrade it. I was like, great. It wasn't too expensive either. I was like, hey, something actually worked out. And so I go ahead and I mod it and everything. And it gets all the firmware. I'm so jazzed about it. I'm showing all my friends. I'm like, check out this badass PS3 I have and all the mods and everything. And I'm playing it one day and the fans kick on like, whoo! Like, not just like, when PS3 fans kick on, but when it kicks on, like the PS3 is about to explode and it goes like full fan mode. The PS3 fans kick on like super loud and super hard. And my screen starts tearing like as I'm playing the game. The PS3 goes crazy and like overheats, and I could even smell like, oh my god, the PS3 is overheating. Like, what the hell's going on? And so I go ahead, I let it cool down, I open it up. The dude did not put thermal paste back in after he downgraded it. So I was like, oh my god, how could you forget the thermal paste? So I went in and put the thermal paste on, but ever since then, the PS3 technically runs, but it runs like weird now. Like, even with thermal paste on, it'll sometimes get funky. It was never the same after that.
Oh
but
boy.
Yeah, that's so now it's like, that's the danger of getting like professional mods sometimes, is they'll forget things like that and kill your system.
Yeah. If anybody in the comments or whatever like needs help modding, just come to his Discord and send me a message. I'll help you out if you have any questions about anything. Just wanted to put that out there.
Well,
because you don't want to leave it with somebody like that that's gonna mess it up if you can do it yourself.
Yeah, and the thing is a lot of these consoles, the modding has become so much simpler these days. Like this was back when it was real complicated. Now I'm pretty sure. Sorry, the internet's been a little bit funky. Okay, it's back now. I think it's YouTube though that does this, because it's only when I do these streams on YouTube on Saturdays that this happens. Like any other times on my streams, this never happens. But with Electric Live, this happens for some weird reason. I have no idea why.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so last year around like April or whatever, when the pandemic first started, I think it was last year, maybe it was a year before that, but they released the break for the Slim PS3.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Yeah, and because I have a PS3 Slim, and actually I think it's my favorite PS3, but it plays PS2 games damn well. People always talk poop about the the, like, what do you call it, non-hardware emulated PS2.
I actually have the hardware emulator one.
You have one?
Yes, I have one.
I had one on release, and my brother sold it or whatever. But those things were great.
Yeah, it's my PS3. And for years, I treat it's modded and everything. I treat it like a. These days, I don't really care as much. I don't actually use it all that often. But for a few years there, it was like the golden PS3. It was like my most valued console. I was like, don't even look at that thing wrong, because it was expensive as hell to get.
Yeah.
And to get it modded too. I have it It's like the ideal PS3. It's modded, backwards compatible. It's in great condition. Just all the whole 9 yards. It cost me a shitload of money too. So, because it had to be both. It had to be both down at the time. Now it doesn't matter, damn it. But at the time, it had to be the perfect firmware and the perfect model. So it was like, you know, when people hunt for Pokemon cards and they try to find a Charizard, it's like hunting for PS3s, trying to find that magic PS3 that had all those qualities.
Yeah. Just let them know real quick in the comments where they can find me.
Oh, yeah. I think you're in both Discords, right? The SCG Rev and in Shmup Junkies?
Yeah.
It's a hunting.
I wasn't. Oh, I just assumed it was your Discord. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's mine. But you're in Shmup Junkies too, if people wanted to find you there.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So yeah, I'm Moondog. I'm Moondog on. Yeah, I'll just put that in. Moondog. Yes, I am Moondog. AE is Moondog. Sorry.
Man of many names.
Right. And actually, I'm Shaman Noodles on Twitch. So
there you go.
I don't stream anymore though, so don't follow me.
I hardly ever stream on Twitch anymore. The only time I do is when I feel like playing music, and I'm just waiting for Twitch to ban me one day. I'm like, because otherwise I'll stream on YouTube. But if I want to play music while I stream, I don't want to do that on my YouTube channel because that's scary. So I'll do it on Twitch, and if Twitch bans me, I guess that's the end of my Twitch channel. Playing chicken. Because they made a new update policy where instead of just muting you, I think you get in trouble now if you play music on there.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's a pain in the ass.
Well, let's get to, real quick, our highlights, our personal highlights for modding through the ages. So what are your personal favorite mods? What do you think are the best mods, and which ones? And again, the thing that I want to bring back to the theme of this episode is a lot of the times, some of these mods are, you know, for piracy, and people say, oh, you're just a bunch of pirates. But I think people are starting to realize that the value of console modding is that it allows you to do things with hardware you could never do. And sometimes that actually really matters when it comes to video game preservation. For example, I don't know if you have a modded PS4. I actually don't. But
I don't.
In the example of PT, I remember PT came out, people downloaded that, and then people were like reselling their PS4s for like way more money because I had PT on them because they took it down. And people would say, people were saying, oh, well, that's the end. When your PS4 dies, that's the end of PT, right? But with console modding, you're able to back that up. You're able to preserve that in a true fashion so that in the future. And I think there was some sort of museum even that had some kind of special permission to mod their PS4 or something to get PT off there or something like that. Like there's actual real recognition of the values of doing this stuff with a lot of these games too. That you see this on the Wii, you see this on the PSN with certain games. Like there's games that come to these systems that could disappear if you don't have them backed up. You see that with the Xbox too. Like the Xbox 360, there's certain like really random little games on the 360 that you kind of need to mod your system to play. The same thing with the Wii channel. When they take down the Wii channel, all the stuff on there, yeah, you could be the biggest purist in the world, but at some point you're gonna need some kind of digital backups of this stuff when the servers go down.
Yeah, even like on PC Engine is a good example of this. Although like this isn't necessarily mod related because the PC Engine CD doesn't have copyright protection, so you can just run any burn game at all. But
is that true? I didn't know that.
Yeah, actually, Sega CD doesn't either.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so those two systems are great if you want to just burn some games and play them. And they also have some good shoot 'em ups like Compile and Total Plane, obviously, not so much on Sega, but a lot of those games are basically like impossible to get here. Like because they're all released Japan only and stuff like that. So it gives you a chance to play those on hardware, on real hardware. So
yeah, even stuff like Radiant Silvergun, for example. I did my 1cc of Radiant Silvergun. You think I'm paying whatever it is for a copy of Radiant Silvergun on the Sega Saturn? It's like $1,000 or something. I can't remember how much, but it's a lot of money. And the Saturn version.
And one argument I would say for these old games, as far as like emulating them and stuff, is like you can't buy those old games from the developer anymore.
Yeah.
So you're either supporting somebody who's reselling it, or you're just downloading it or whatever.
Or they're just gone. And is that the alternative? Right. And you know what the funny thing is here? And this is where I really wish I was a lawyer or had more lawyerly knowledge. But when it comes to copyright law, like as originally intended, not as it has been Disneyfied, but as originally intended, there was something in copyright law where if you could no longer produce the copyrighted thing, you would actually lose your copyright and it would become public domain. Now, thanks to all of the laws that we have now, that's like, you have to wait 1,000 years before that happens. But it was something like that, where let's say you wrote, because the problem is the reason why they did this was because otherwise copyright people could censor shit by getting a hold of the copyright. And then like Dr. Seuss, I think Dr. Seuss is a perfect example of this, right? Where the Dr. Seuss Foundation is censoring those books or whatever. They're saying you can't sell these versions or whatever. But I think there's something in copyright law where if you don't produce it or you don't give people access to it for a certain amount of time, the comments will kill me here because I'm sure someone knows this really well. You lose that copyright and it falls into the public domain. And so you could almost make an argument with some of these games, like if they're not producing a way to play these games for long enough, now, of course, that doesn't actually happen because our copyright law prevents anything falling into the public domain for trillions of years now. But like the original spirit of it was something like that. And that's kind of the situation we run into with these older games. That's why I'm a little more gray area with this stuff. Like if a new Steam game, a new shmup comes out on Steam, like Rolling Gunner or something, and you pirate that, I'm like, that's just kind of grimy, honestly. But with these games, like what do you like Radiant Silvergun? What are you supposed to do here? Like I already bought it on the 360. I bought it on the Xbox. Yeah. I bought the game twice now, but I want to play it on the Saturn because the Saturn version is the best. So what am I supposed to do? I have to buy $1,000 resold copy? That you see the issue.
I think legally you actually can since you own the software on a platform.
Right. Yeah. And that's the weird thing about video games. That's so different than all the other stuff. Like a book is a book, right? You just own the thing. I guess if you had to buy the digital version of it, but you still own that digital thing. But the weird thing about video games is we've been trained probably from Nintendo and other things that every platform release of that game is like a distinct release. So you can't just buy Super Nintendo on your Super Nintendo, you can't just buy Super Metroid on your Super Nintendo. You need to buy it on your Super Nintendo, you need to buy it on your Wii, you need to buy it on your 3DS, you need to buy it on your Switch when it comes to the Switch. Like they make you rebuy the game over and over and over, and they kind of act like it's piracy to emulate that SNES version on your Switch. But you own that SNES, but you own the version on the SNES. See, it gets ugly real quick, because with the Saturn version of Radiant Silvergun, it actually plays better than the 360 version if you're going for the 1cc. So there's like a legit reason why you want to play it on the Saturn, but there's no way to purchase it anymore other than buying a used copy. So it gets real gray real quick as far as, so what is the issue with burning a copy and playing it? Because like you said, I've already bought it twice on 2 different platforms. It's a mess.
I always suggest to everybody, if there's a way to buy something from the developer, you absolutely should. Because if you don't support the developer, you're not going to see their games again. Like, having that said, like...
But the problem with that, though, I agree 80% of the cases, but the weird case is when the original developer is dead. They're gone. They don't exist. But some other company buys their IPs and then starts churning out these shitty versions of their games. Like, they're doing this with Psycho now. On the Switch, they churning out these horrible Psycho Switch ports, and people are saying, because I gave them negative reviews, and like people were telling me, Mark, don't give these negative reviews because people won't buy them. I was like, No. That's not how it works in the world of reviewing. That's like, in my opinion, that's pretty corrupt to think that way.
Yeah, that's politics.
Yeah, that's politics. But also, in the case of Psycho, that's a great example. Like, what do you do? Psycho is gone. There's no, but these other companies own those IPs now, and they're not treating them respectfully, in my opinion. They're treating them like they're McDonald's toys, and they're just, Whoppers. They're just thrown out the door. So in those cases,
right.
I don't know what to do there. Honestly, I really don't have an answer there as far as, other than, because, buy the PCBs, but people aren't willing to do that. Psycho PCBs are pretty cheap, though, compared to other PCBs.
Yeah, I don't judge. Like, people are gonna do what they're gonna do. Like, I'm not gonna sit here and dictate what they should and shouldn't do. But I'm just saying, like, if you really like a developer, you really should support them because, they'll make more titles. And other ones, like, I'll support them because they're making an effort. Like with the Aleste collection on the Switch.
Yeah.
Even though I could go and emulate any of those games, like, I bought it because it's like, I really appreciate them going the extra mile and doing this for us.
Yeah, M2 really are the answer, the Shot Triggers team, because they satisfy both conditions in my brain. One is you need to treat the games with respect, and you need to make, as far as like technically making them play as they should play, M2 definitely deliver there. And so I can actually play Ketsui on the PS4 and feel like, hey, I am playing Ketsui here. The lag's good, they have all these options, they have all these things. But what makes M2 Shot Triggers team so fantastic, in my opinion, is they go the extra mile, because then they add in exclusive content that you cannot get through emulation. So you could be the biggest fan of emulation in the world, which I am, and you would still buy that port because it has Destiny mode, it has that other special, I can't remember, the Contest 2007 IKD mode. These are two things you cannot get through emulation. You can change the ship colors, which is really cool. I like being able to change the ship colors. And then it also has the online leaderboards. And then it also has the extra soundtracks. So they are throwing a ton of stuff at you to say, listen, now just playing the PCB seems kind of lame, doesn't it? Right? Because there's all this other cool stuff you can do. And I think that's the real answer. And unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of companies doing that other than M2 Shot Triggers. But I think that is the way to make these old IPs, to validate what you're doing, is you're just doing everything right.
Yeah, it's funny you said that because I actually ordered the DOJ. What's that?
The PS2 version?
DOJ. What's that?
Is it the PS2 version?
No,
or
I
the
ordered
360?
the PGM. I ordered the bootleg PGM.
Oh yeah, the PGM cart. Yeah, I have those too.
I haven't gotten it yet.
Here, let me grab them while you talk. Go ahead and talk. I'll grab mine.
Yeah, nice, awesome. So I got so for these I got they have 3 different PGM ports, bootleg ports, which are DOJ, Dodonpachi DOJ. I think it's called Diojo.
Yes.
And Ketsui, and what's the third one? Espagolda.
Espagolda.
Espagolda. Yeah.
I don't have Ketsui because it's plugged into my PGM, and you gotta like yank it out of there. It's not like a Super Nintendo where you just stick it in. It's like gotta brace it, pull them out. But yeah, here they are. And some people have had mixed experiences with these. I've had great experiences. All of mine work really well. So, but I remember
the guy who did the
Kiwi ordered them, and his did not. So, they're bootlegs. So you're taking a little risk. I'll put that out there.
Actually, the guy I talked to in China, he claimed that they were not bootlegs.
Oh boy.
And they were like officially sold in Asia as like, some official port just so they could use it on PGM arcade machines. I don't know if that's true. I'm not a professional.
I would say
that was
it might be true in Chinese law, but probably not in Japanese law. If you ask Cave, is this a bootleg? Cave's gonna slap you so hard in the side of the face.
Yeah, well, it's pretty impressive to me that it works so well on the PGM1 as opposed to the PGM2, which is what it was originally made on.
Oh, really? I had no idea.
Yeah, so that's why I was thinking.
I wonder if I have a PGM2 or not. How do you tell the difference between the two? I might have a PGM2. Maybe that's the magic sauce.
1 second, somebody's at my door.
Uh-oh. Okay. Here, I'll go ahead and boop. Okay. So here are the PGM bootleg carts. Yes. This is another example of console modding is the future, because if you want to play these bad boys on PGM, oh, you get
I'm back.
you're getting deliveries. I was saying if you want to play these bad boys on arcade, they're very expensive to get the original PCBs. But if you want a more accessible way to play the PCBs, these bootleg PGMs, and I have a whole video on it too. There's a whole video on my channel. It's not a very popular video, but I have a whole video on how to get them, how to set them up, how to get it all working and everything like that. Yeah, and they're fantastic.
Yeah.
And they're three of the best shmups around. I would say, of course, Katsui and DOJ, but Espelute is a great game too. Espelute is really good. So you get, and then if you're really cool, you can order B-Storm, which is actually made. That's an official game. So B-Storm is officially a real game.
The only one I could find was $400. So
yeah,
beware, everybody.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I heard, not that long ago, B-Storm was dirt cheap. You could buy B-Storm for like nothing.
Oh, geez. Those were the days, huh?
Yeah. People are asking what a PGM is. That's a great question. So a PGM stands for Polygame Master. It's like a MVS. It's very similar. It's like the same idea, where it's a cartridge-based arcade system, like an MVS. But it has badass shmups on it, basically. It at least has 4 of them. B-Storm, DOJ. I like B-Storm. B-Storm, DOJ, Cat, and Espelute. I think there's some other shmups on there too, but those are the big ones. Yeah, it's a piece of arcade hardware. And it's pretty small. When you think of arcade hardware, you think of like this big old board, like that you typically get. But no, it's like it's like the size of a PS1, really. It's like this big. It's fatter, but it's like this big size-wise.
Okay, so
I love my PGM. It's my favorite.
About that, guys. I'm gonna mute this for a second because it might make some noise.
Okay, go ahead. But anyway, so we went through our favorite mods, and we talked about the Xbox, the PS3. We talked about the PS4. And
wait.
What you got there?
So this is perfect timing. So this literally just came in the mail. This is a CPS2 board, which is very similar to a PGM.
Shit.
Yeah. So as you can see, it's gigantic, right? So the CPS2 boards are very interesting because the bottom has I think it's CPS-A, which is basically like a PGM, and the top is like the cartridge. So this whole top comes off.
I've never seen one. I've never seen what a CPS looks like.
Yeah, CPS2. So it's actually super interesting that this came in because we were right on the subject. This was actually started as, I want to say, Marvel versus Capcom.
Yeah.
But somebody took out the ROM chip inside and replaced it with Daimahu. Or Maho, Great Maho.
So is that what you have in there?
Yes. That's what this is. I ordered it from Brazil. There's somebody out there.
I know. The South Americans, I have to say, they are like the modding kings. They are really good at modding stuff. Like a lot of the modded shit I order comes from South America too. I think my PGM came from South America. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. It's so they like this guy must know a community of these people because he sells a bunch of these.
My camera got too hot. I've never seen that happen before.
Yeah, that's interesting. I can see it. Actually, it's getting really hot in here.
Oh, I'm sitting in my shed in 100 degrees. Yeah. That might be the end of my camera for the. Oh, wait, hold on. Oh, I'll let you talk. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. So on these CPS2 boards, they have it's super complex inside. They have these ROM chips and they have the game on them. You can replace the ROM chip with a different game, like I said. But it's actually a little bit more intricate than that. Like you have to I want to see if they like bridge a few things. I couldn't tell you exactly the process, but it's super interesting. And those, like, I have to agree that those guys in Brazil who are doing this are super, super smart.
Yeah, well, that's another example of console modding being the future, because as we get further and further away from these hardware, the original hardware, it's just going to start breaking down, and you're going to have to start coming up with creative solutions to replace it.
Right.
Like a player, I think it was Eaglet, he has a real, like, legit Dodonpachi DOJ board, and it died. I'm like,
Oh.
dude, that sucks. And getting these PCBs fixed is probably not easy.
Does he still have it?
I think so. He might have sent it in to get it repaired or something, but I haven't talked to him. I talked to him like a year or so, but like, one solution for that would be, you know, it's not a great solution, but one solution to that would be, you know, get it on the PGM, you know? So, because if, let's say my PGM explodes and my bootleg card explodes, replacing that is so much less of a cost than replacing probably a $3,000 or $4,000 PCB or something like that. You know, it's a fraction of the price. It's about, the card's about $80, $60, somewhere in there. And then the PGM's like $120. It's like a $200 price tag.
Yeah, arcade boards specifically are known to be very unreliable. Like, there's certain arcade boards, you can shake them, and if you shake them hard enough, the parts will fall off of them.
Oh, I know. I'm scared. I have a Strikers board, like a legit one, and I'm scared it's getting cooked out here in my recording shed. But it was $150, so if it dies, it dies.
Yeah, that's why I didn't want to get Sorcerer Striker on arcade PCB, because it costs like $2-3 grand. If that breaks on the delivery here from Japan or something like that, that's just a big hit.
Yeah, I know. PCBs are scary, especially when people are like the campaign version of Dodonpachi, which there's only a few PCBs of that around, and no one's dumped it yet. You know, it's like, that's scary. You're playing with fire there.
Yeah, I'm sure they're gonna have a hard time getting a lot of those rare arcade PCBs. There's like Bat Rider, that one's really expensive.
But it's like this weird hostage situation with campaign version, because Cave knows who owns it, I'm pretty sure. So it's like, if someone dumps it, it's like, we know who dumped that, right? Whereas with other things, like someone dumped a rare Battle Grega prototype they found, and they've dumped like special versions of DOJ that they found, like the Dodonpachi 3, which is like in between white label and black label. Like, these things happen with rare PCBs, but because Cave knows who owns the Dodonpachi campaign versions, it's kind of this weird game of, I don't know how we're ever going to get that thing dumped. I think the best chance is M2 actually doing it in a port. Like, they make Dodonpachi port, and then they include campaign version. I think that's the biggest chance. And that'll be the one time in my YouTubing career, you know, when people do those big pop-off videos like, oh my gosh, when games come out. If they ever announce that would be the one time you'll get that from me, is if they announce Dodonpachi campaign M2.
Yeah, I was actually asking you just before the thing cut off if there was any good Bat Rider ports.
No. There's no ports.
No.
There aren't any. The game has not been ported.
That kills me, man, because Bat Rider is the one that, like, you see people talk about. They're like, oh, if you like Compile or Rising, like.
Oh yeah, Bat Rider in Grega. Now Grega has a really good port on the PS4, and I just sort of assumed that M2 realized it was their job to release Bat Rider. I assumed that it was like, you know, when they're drawing up their documents for the company's goals, like 1 Grega, 2 Bat Rider. I assume, but they still haven't done it. And so they need to get a move on it, because it's their destiny to release Bat Rider. And I'm wondering if maybe they just want to do a really good job or what. But yeah, I mean, the people who need to port Bat Rider are the M2 Shot Triggers team, because no one else is going to do it right. And they need to get around to it soon. But you can play Bat Rider on ShmupArch pretty well if you want to emulate it. I recommend that. Or I guess the newer versions of main, people recommend that as well, but still.
Do you do the run ahead?
Yes.
Delay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, on ShmupArch, I configure it to be a little bit under what the PS I think it's 3 frames. You can make it down to 1 if you want, but I kind of put it down to 2 or 3 frames in SmubArch just to make it feel a little bit more arcade-like. Because the Garega PCB and the Batrider PCB are both a little bit laggy, even on the actual PCBs themselves. So I kind of try and match it a little bit, but it's a little bit under. It's a little bit more responsive than the PCB, but not a whole lot more. About a frame or so.
Well, you're like a god at shmups, and I'm poop, so I'm probably gonna do it the best I can.
Yeah, I'm releasing a new version of SmubArch here soon, and Batrider's on. Well, it's on SmubArch 6 as well, but yeah, that's how I play Batrider. But we don't have an official way to play that game as far as ports because it's never been ported.
Yeah, that's one thing that like I hope they port, or the Mister hops on it. Is it on? I can't even remember what that's on. Is it just PCB or is it like a CPS2 or?
No, it's not CPS2. That would be cool. I don't know what the hell the thing's on. I'm assuming it's the same thing as Garega. Whatever Garega's on, it's on as well.
Garega's on PCB.
Yeah, I don't know the board itself, like what type of board they're using. I probably could look that up, but it would be great if they brought it to the Mister. I don't know if they are or not.
Yeah. So Rob was wondering if it's the Black Label version, and I'm pretty sure it is.
Yes. I've heard there's a multi-cart where you can have white and black. Well, the thing is, yeah, because the thing about it is my cart only contains black label. Sorry, my camera keeps getting too hot. But I've heard there is a cart, a bootleg cart with both versions on there. I just don't have it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't. The cart that I ordered, I think it's just a Black Label.
Yeah, I think that's the more common one. The thing about it, though, if you want to play White Label, there's a very good port of White Label on the PS2. Very, very good port.
So I'm not as familiar. Is the Black Label means it's like super hard? Is that it?
No, actually, Black Label is easier than White Label, but
okay.
It's actually like a different version of the game because Cave released White Label, and White Label is insane as far as it's a very difficult game, and the hyper is a little bit strict. I like both versions. They're both very good versions. They're just different. They're so different that they kind of warrant being different versions of the game. Like some of the patterns are changed. White Label has more aggressive rank. You don't get a hyper as much in White Label. The second loop takes away all your extends in White Label, and you have to earn them back. And in Black Label, you get them. So I guess Black Label is the more balanced and probably superior version of the game. But White Label is fun for how insane it is, and it is definitely entertaining to watch and play. And I actually did a run of White Label, just the first loop, in the last Shmup Slam. That was really fun.
Yeah, that's good, because I'm not that good at shmups yet.
Yeah, Black Label is definitely the way to learn the game, I would say. Because White Label's brutal.
Nice.
But if you really want to play it, there is a very good version of it on the PS2.
Great. So, yeah, you were getting on to the next topic when I cut you off about the CPS2.
Oh, yeah. So let's wrap it up here before we do the hot takes. Let me make sure, see if we missed any of the main topics here. We got modding through the ages, Switch modding, we covered that. Hardest mods, I think we covered that. Any last personal stories with modding before we get to the hot take section?
Trying to think if there's anything notable.
Well, maybe let's just round off real quick. Go through what consoles you have that are modded. Like, what are you working with here?
Well, geez, I have a lot of, I think we touched on most all of them. You see GBA, PSP, PS3, Super Nintendo mods. Oh, Genesis we didn't really touch on.
Yeah. Do you have a modded Genesis? I don't.
So there's a couple different mods you can do on Genesis depending on which models you have. The most common mod, I haven't personally done them because I didn't want to spend the money at the time. But they make like a mega amp mod because I don't know if like how familiar y'all are with this, but the Sega Genesis has multiple revisions where some of them have really, really bad audio output.
Oh, I
And
heard
actually,
about that.
Yeah, really bad. Like the Model 1 Genesis has mostly good audio output. I have a Model 2 Genesis which has absolute trash output. Some of them have better outputs on Model 2 and like the later revisions, but I have like the one like dead in the middle, which is really poop. So I wanted to order a mega amp to get that done, which clears up the audio. They also make a crystal clear audio mod, I think they call it, or and actually, I think Voltar did a mod where he puts the crystal clear audio mod on the same PCB as, I think it's like a D-Jetter or something like that. I don't quote me on that. I could be wrong. I don't remember. But there's some good quality of life mods in the Genesis that you can do.
Yeah, I bet the sound is the big one, right? Because that thing is known for its sound. People love the
That
Genesis
reminds
sound.
me. So I have, when you have the Sega CD attachment, the CD games have their own audio.
Right.
chip.
Yeah.
Yes, and actually it has its own audio connections, left and right, RCA connections. So I didn't think it was like too important for me at the time because I play mostly Sega CD games when I get the chance, like Robo Alest.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Robo Alest is only okay as a shmup, only okay, but the music's great.
And so we got the Genesis. Any Neo Geo stuff with you? You have an MVS, you said.
Oh
just
yeah,
got an
Neo
MVS.
Geo. I went with the MVS. I actually was thinking about getting the Neo Geo CD, which outputs S video, which is great.
The problem with that, is there a mod for the CD yet? Because that CD, I was going to get one for years, but the load times on that thing are insane.
Yeah, so there's a few things about that. There's a CDZ, which is like the Neo Geo CD, but the upgraded version they came out with in Japan, which is double the load speed. Still not great.
Yeah, because those things take forever.
Yeah, they made an SD. Somebody made an SD mod for a Neo Geo, but he discontinued it, unfortunately, which is actually the reason why I went with the MVS.
Yeah, that would be the magic button for the CD would be if they found a way to just remove the CD and just directly inject those load times so they would just go fast, super fast. That would be an accomplishment to pull that off.
Yeah, so the SD mod, it's just like your normal like flash cart basically, and those load like almost instant.
Wow. So that would be the answer. See, that's another thing of like the original hardware. You got to do something with that original hardware. Do you want to get these games to be played well? Because
it has
that
like
CD
a
is
drive.
That CD, the load times are so ridiculous in it. I think it's unplayable personally. I can't stand it.
Yeah, that's another reason why I went with the MVS. And also one thing that disappoints me about going with the MVS though, one nod toward the CD is that the CD music is all arranged and it's phenomenal.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
I love Neo Geo music, especially when they arrange it and they bring in like real instruments and everything.
Yeah, and I want to say like the majority of ports on the CD are arranged, which is just amazing.
I wonder if that's where the Metal Slug arranges come from. It must be then, right? The Metal Slug music arranges.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So I wonder where that comes from. Yeah, that's really cool. They're on the Neo Geo CD. I want to get an AES at one point. I just want one. There's no logic behind it. There's no logic because the MVS can do it. You can also do it on the Mister, but I just want one.
Right, and you can actually get a little physical converter that will play MVS carts on your AES.
Yes, I heard about that.
And
I'd probably just throw a flash card on top of that thing and call it a day.
Right, I would have gone with that. Excuse me. I would have gone with the AES, but at the time it's like $500, $600, something like that.
Yeah, it's
and
so
then
expensive.
I was hanging out on the arcade PCB boards where they sell stuff. It's like you can do like want to buy and want to sell. Somebody was selling their AES for only $325. I know.
That's a price that's painful because it's just enough to be kind of hurting your wallet, but it's also so cheap comparatively to what it normally is that you feel. Ooh, it puts you in that bind of like the addiction of I must buy, but can I afford? Yeah, this is why I got out of PCBs, or I try to stay away from PCBs, because I get into this real collector's dilemma that I don't really run into in a lot of other things, where it's like someone's selling, like if someone's selling their Dodonpachi board for like $600, I'm like, yeah, I must buy, but I don't have $600 to just throw at a board. But you know what I mean? It gets a little scary, addictive at times. So that's why I don't look at that stuff anymore too much.
Yeah. I somebody just made me think of this. It's super off topic and random, but if any of you guys have a PC Engine and you do the RGB mods, you should know that you should have the what's it called? The damn low pass filter. You should turn it off if you're using a PC Engine.
Right. How do you do that? How do you turn that off?
With the OSSC, you can turn it off on that.
Oh, okay.
Or so on the physical mod, you can turn it off by bridging these 2 points. It says LPF on the board if you're getting it from Voltar or Dojin Dance, and so you can just bridge that connection real quick and turn it off that way. Yeah, I pointed that out because I was kind of frustrated when I first modded my first PC Engine, and then like there was like once every like 5 minutes the screen would flicker, and I'm like, this is so irritating, you know?
That's bad.
And like it took me, and I was like, it's got to be the sync, because like I'm not, you know, I'm very like, I make sure I do like a perfect job when I mod them so that they don't like break the hardware.
Yeah.
And I was like, I know there's no like bridge connections in here. What is going on? Like the sync is clean. So it's just because the when you double up the low pass filter, for some strange reason, the PC Engine will run faster than 60 hertz a lot of the time, which is actually yeah, it's incredible, because the PC Engine is just an awesome machine. If you use it, you probably know what I mean. It's very smooth gameplay with shoot 'em ups and stuff. Doesn't drop in frame rate, but anyway, the OSSC can't really keep up with it when this sync just explodes like that.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, but if you turn the low pass filter off and then you just run it from the PC Engine's filter, it works fine.
I wonder what would happen if you're doing that on a real CRT. If the CRT would go a little crazy. I don't know, maybe it wouldn't.
Probably accept it just fine. CRTs have like basically like an infinite, you know, refresh rate.
Yeah, very true. Yes, very true. Yeah, the CRT, like high refresh rate CRT stuff, still kind of blows my mind a little bit.
It blows my mind too. It's almost like we went backwards, but it was like a trade-off, because CRTs are so big and obnoxious.
Yeah. My dream for CRTs, and I'll probably, if I ever do it, I'll probably put this bad boy in storage, but is to get that giant 1080p CRT monitor that the guy used to make Doom on. Have you seen that thing?
No, I never even heard of this. This sounds amazing.
It's an old... So the guy who programmed Doom, John McCormack or whatever, he programmed it on a 1080p CRT, and it's like this 1080p... It's for, you know, computers, but still. It's like this beast of a thing. I really want to get one. If I ever get some money to play around with, that's the first thing I'm going to get. Because it's going to be great for shmups and for just like other games too. High resolution CRT. It's such a cool thing. So I want to get one of those.
Crazy expensive.
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it's stupid expensive. And of course the shipping is probably $1 billion because it's a giant CRT.
Yeah.
But that's my dream. Forget PVM. That thing is like way cooler than a PVM.
I'd have to agree.
So let's get to our hot takes section, everyone. Let me pull up the hot takes. Oh, yeah. Okay, so for those who haven't tuned into the stream before, the hot takes is the way we end the episodes, by just saying hot takes, and then two of us will appear, and if this chat does not supply hot takes, I'll have to come up with some, or Moondog will come up with some. Do we have any hot takes on deck? Maybe while I wait, I better supply a hot take, because sometimes it takes chat a little bit to catch up. Let me think of a hot take as far as console modding goes. There's a lot of them out there.
Let's hear some hot takes, friends.
Do you have anything in mind as far as a hot take for yourself?
I'm not I'm not 100% sure what you mean by hot take, but
Oh, okay. I better come up with an example then. So hot take is just kind of a controversial-ish opinion, but there's like a grain of truth in there that makes it interesting to talk about. Hot cakes.
oh, fantastic.
So I'm trying to think about. So one hot take that we did in the episode is definitely analog, and the way they're maybe inflating their own prices a little bit with their maybe some artificial scarcity. I would definitely agree with that hot take in there. I think something's up with that. You know, because a lot of things that they do don't make a whole lot of business sense wise. Like, why are you doing this business sense wise? So yeah, I've always felt there's something weird going on there with their systems and everything. Granted, they're still better than a lot of the other stuff out there, but here's a hot take that I am not a fan of basically any of the mini consoles that have come out. So the Super Nintendo Mini, the PC Engine Mini, the Nintendo Mini, the Genesis Mini. I think they're all pretty trash, to be honest. But I don't review them on my channel because the backlash would be so intense that I was like, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. So I'm a big fan of the Mister. I like the Mister a lot. I think it's just the way to go instead of doing all these sort of stupid mini consoles. And I know a lot of people have defenses for them and everything, and they're fine as like fun little consumer things, but I'm not a big fan of the mini trend at all. Even when they did the Sega Astro Mini, I mean, how much more can something be in my wheelhouse than a Sega Astro Mini? But even then, I was like, no. And the Neo Geo Minis, I mean, they try, but I just don't think there's any sort of configuration like that's going to appeal to me over something like the Mister.
To be honest with you, I find, and this is definitely a hot take, I find it to be dishonest that they release those mini consoles with emulation.
That's true, because a lot of people don't.
Not really.
A lot of people don't know it's emulation. Like the casual people, people that are like beating each other in stores to get one. They don't really realize that it's not exactly going to perform the way they played it in the past. Like they don't know they're going to be playing through a pile of input lag and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's dishonest in my opinion. Like calling it a mini Super Nintendo, you're thinking like I'm getting a Super Nintendo, like not I'm getting a Raspberry Pi in a box. Like.
yeah, and the hardware on those things is not that impressive, right? At least that I've heard last. The biggest disappointment though is definitely the Genesis Mini for me, because M2 worked on that. It's like, M2, come on now. Come on, do a better job. Yeah. You're M2. You can't just besmirch your name with a product like this.
Yeah, and actually Cerberus dropped a good point. Like so FPG, like their Mister is an FPGA, right?
Yeah.
And people think like, oh, you need an FPGA to make like an analog device, for example, to work the way you want the console to work. You can actually use this might be what analog does, which is you can use an ASIC, which is almost like an FPGA, except it's not programmable necessarily. It just has one specific core.
Yes, right.
Yeah. So so that's what I think would have been the appropriate way to go about the mini consoles, which is probably basically what analog's doing.
Well, there's also a deep irony with the mini consoles, because these companies not that long ago sued the crap out of emulators and tried to get them shut down and did basically everything in their power to destroy emulation as much as they could. And then when they realized, wait a minute here, this is pretty profitable, let's do this. I think Sony's probably, I mean, Nintendo's bad because they attack everything, but I think Sony might be even more, because they went after Bleem, and that was like just the emulator.
I remember that.
It wasn't even like, they couldn't even pretend like they were doing anything software wise. Bleem was just an emulator to play Sony games on your Dreamcast. Like, you'd have to still own the Sony game. You couldn't like burn it and put it in there. Maybe you could, but that wasn't part of the marketing, at least anyway.
And it also worked terribly bad.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even know why it was worth their time. Like, Bleem worked awful. Like, I don't know if anybody's tried it.
Yeah.
But it's terrible.
Yeah, but they sued the shit out of them.
Yeah, it was like one kid, wasn't it?
It's a small company, I know that.
Yeah.
And basically, that was the end of it. And then they I think it wasn't just on the Dreamcast though. I think Bleem was doing stuff on the PC too, where you could play Sony stuff on your PC as well.
Oh.
Yeah, I think. I'm a little fence. But I remember another one too is I think it was Nintendo. They released I think one Super Mario Bros. Or one of their Mario games, and it turned out on one of their virtual consoles, it turned out the ROM was from a ROM site. They used a ROM site's ROM.
Oh,
yeah,
that's hilarious.
Yeah, that should have been a controversy, but everyone just kind of laughed about it. But yeah, like people could tell because you could see the headers of the ROMs. There's a whole video about this, and you look at the header of the ROM in the virtual console, and it was a header from a ROM site. You could tell. And it makes sense because they probably don't have ROMs sitting around. You know, they throw everything away. And they're too lazy to rip their own ROM, I guess. So they get one off a site. Yeah. Yeah, the Capcom stick uses Final Burn Alpha. That caused a big controversy. I think that's why Final Burn Neo exists now, because the Capcom stick... Though, I will say this, I don't think Capcom has been really that aggressive towards emulation or anything. So maybe they have, and I haven't seen it before. So that one I'm a little less, like, morally affronted by. It's grimy, but I don't think it's nearly as ironic as like Sony or Nintendo doing it. Any other hot takes, chat? We got any hot takes?
Yeah, let's get some controversy in here.
Oh yeah, the PlayStation Classic is bad. I would say that's a hot take, but I think everyone agrees on that one. I think everyone's like, yeah, that thing does suck.
It's not a hot take if it's outright true.
Yeah. I would say, I guess one hot take would be that I'm thinking that these days with all the developments with the Mister, here's a hot take for you. I'm less and less interested in like all the console modding in terms of like RGB and stuff these days, because the Mister is just doing so well and it's so outperforming what I do on my consoles anyway, that I have all my consoles except the CD based ones, like my PlayStations and everything. I have them just packed up and put away because I don't really feel a reason to play my Super Nintendo anymore. And so in one way, I'm actually kind of glad I didn't fully go full force into the RGB stuff and spend hundreds of dollars on like PVMs and on my getting everything all RGB modded up, because the Mister is just such a beast now that I feel like it's quickly replacing the original hardware anyway.
Yeah.
What do you think about
that? I mean,
that?
there's always going to be people collecting, but as far as like if you're actually trying to play the game, like I definitely see the attractiveness of a Mister.
Yeah, like the Misters are probably the reason why I won't buy an AES, even though I want one just for the hell of it. Like, why would I? But practically speaking, what would I do with it? I mean, the Neo Geo core on the Mister is a beast, and so like, you know what I mean? For me, it's finding it harder and harder to sort of justify buying these consoles anywhere, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, I have to agree with Rob in saying the Mister is too expensive right now.
How much is it now?
It's like to put one together and all that. It's about $400.
Holy smokes! Has there been a huge price jump?
Yeah, because the people who are into the DE10 Nano, or is that what it's called? DE10 Nano?
Yeah.
They scooped them all up when it was like 125 or whatever the hell it was.
Yeah, I bought my Mister for like altogether probably $200. Everything. That's with the extra boards and everything.
Oh wow, with everything.
Everything, yeah. It was like $200, somewhere around there.
Wow, yeah. I was putting the pricing together and it ended up being.
Do you have one?
400. I don't have one yet because I decided to hold off because to get one, you're pretty much paying like. What's that? We
forgot show and tell. I guess I better show my Mister. Don't laugh, Chad. Don't laugh. Okay, let me wipe the dust off a little bit here. But so when I bought the Mister, they didn't have cases, and after a while, I didn't like my Mister just sitting around naked in my shed because it's dirty out here. I made a case out of Tupperware. So this is my Mister case. It's got here's the USB hub.
I don't think you can see it on the camera. You might have to lift it up.
You guys can't see this? It might just be the lag. Can you see it now?
Yeah, I can see it now when you lift it up.
And then I cut a hole in the top for the venting. Yeah, that's my Mister to go.
I actually love it.
But it protects it. Because the
That's
case,
great.
they were out of cases, and I didn't want to spend hundreds of dollars on a freaking case. You know, it's out in the shed. Everything out here is dirty and grimy and ugly, so. But it's protected, and that's what matters. And if you ever need to put it in a microwave, it's very convenient. My Mister in the Tupperware case.
Heating it up.
Yeah. Yeah, but if you want a cheap case for a Mister, there you go. You just need a razor blade and a $2 Tupperware container.
That reminded me that I have to buy an arcade card for my PC Engines just so I can try Jenga Fouquet Sapphire.
Nice.
I don't know why that reminded me of that, but speaking of spending money senselessly on hardware.
Yeah. I don't really recommend the Mister if it's that expensive. I would say hang in there until it comes back down in price. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, I agree. I don't morally believe in paying somebody to upsell it like that because that makes more people do it.
Yeah, so what's going on exactly? So scalpers have that board and they're just upselling the crap out of it? Is that what's going on?
Yeah, and they stopped producing them because of the whole COVID thing.
Oh, yeah. Jeez.
And actually, I'm pretty sure the DE10 Nano is sold at a loss because it's what do you call it?
A developer board?
Yeah, the developer board, the DE10 Nano. It's because it's sold for like students and stuff like that. It's sold for like research purposes.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, so it's what's the name for it when they like?
Yeah, hot take burned up my camera. Well, that's a hot take for the world. The Mister's going up in price. I actually was not aware of that.
Yeah, and like I said, I just won't support anybody who just like buys it just to upsell like that. It's kind of a dick thing to do.
It's grime. It's called grime.
Although, like,
of the
that's
maximum order.
It's technically efficient.
Well,
'Cause
the
it's
thing
better.
about it though is like people say it's capitalism and all that, and it's like sure, but there's called tactics, and one of the tactics of capitalism is wait them out. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
you're gonna upsell it.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
exactly.
wait you out, boy, until you get sweating and you have dropped the price again.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's how I always treat scalpers is if people start scalping stuff, I just say wait them out.
Right.
My
You know what's
favorites
funny?
favorites is when people try to scalp stuff and they buy all this stuff and then the price crashes and then they end up like losing a bunch of money. That's always the best. Those are always feel good stories.
I laugh so hard when that happens. Nintendo was expected to come out with, I can't remember what the heck it was. It was some console, I think, and it was expected to be super limited. And so you had all these scalpers buying a ton of them. And
Yeah.
That's what happened.
Yes.
They ended up producing plenty of them in Nintendo.
Yeah,
So
I know.
They paid retail prices for some shit.
Oh, the Steam Deck. What do you think about that? That's a great hot take topic. What's your hot take on the Steam Deck?
I'm not sure what a Steam Deck is.
Okay, I'll tell you what it is. It's a new product introduced by Steam. It's like a Switch, but instead of being a Switch, it's a computer.
Right,
and-
I did see that on Twitch or Twitter.
Yeah, and I'll admit I'm kind of interested in it, to be honest, because
It looks beautiful.
for shmups, the Steam library is insane in the world of shmups. I mean, the Nintendo Switch has a solid library of shmups, but you're not gonna touch the Steam library. And plus, since it's a PC, I mean, come on now.
Do you know what the specs are on it?
I've heard it's a beast. I don't know what the specs are, but I've heard it's a freaking beast. So
What about the price?
So I think the price is like $400 or something like that. So it's a full on beast, but I'm kind of interested in it honestly because I love handhelds and I play my Switch as a handheld all the time. But I mean, if I had a handheld that was a PC and you could do all the fun stuff on it, I mean, that sounds pretty awesome. Now, my concerns are the actual hardware itself. Like, how long does this thing run? on batteries. Like, is this like a 2-hour thing? You know what I mean? Like, getting that stuff right, it seems trivial, but it makes or breaks a handheld. And I think that's the
absolutely.
I think that's the big question mark with this thing, because I don't think the Steam company is known for being hardware experts or anything like that. And I feel like their Steam controller is kind of a flop, right? So I think I'm optimistic, but I'm not gonna just say buy now or whatever.
Right. Although I did hear that what's that thing, the Steam device that like you plug up to the TV and it like streams or whatever?
Oh, Steam OS or whatever it is. The Ouya? What was it? Something like that.
Yeah, but I hear like only good things about those. Like everybody always raves about them.
Huh. I've never gotten one. Just because, I've never really need Steam Link. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I've never really felt the need for one, but the thing about this thing though is in the world of shmups, it's got you covered. I wonder if it could even run Xenia. That would be impressive. If it could run 360 emulators on it. But I'm sure it could, since it's a PC, you could run MAME on that thing, which you can't do on non-PC stuff. Like even the Switch, even the Xbox or whatever, you can't run MAME on them because it needs to be on a PC to run MAME. But that thing could run MAME, it could run Groovy MAME. I think I'm interested. The controls themselves look a little bit insane, I'm not going to lie. Like the D-pad looks a little suspect on that thing.
Yeah. There's a few different like intricacies, like you said, like the devil's in the details.
Yeah.
Like how hot is it gonna get when because you're holding it, so it's your hand heat plus the CPU heat.
Yeah.
Like how long will it survive, and the resolution. I was gonna say like if it's a low enough resolution, it'll probably run like really fast and be able to run like a good amount of stuff.
Yeah. See, this is one of the few products that's been introduced that my ears are like, ooh, I'm interested in this. Because it's doing things that I've wanted to be done for a very long time that no one's done, which is get a PC on a handheld that runs well, that can do things. Because there's just so many, especially with shmups, there's so many shmups exclusive to the PC that would be fantastic to play. And it could be really cool. So I'm optimistic about it, but I could also see it being a nightmare with just a few mistakes. Like for instance, let's say the D-pad sucks, and let's say the screen is laggy. Now it's a nightmare. Just those two mistakes alone. Like if they put imagine they put a screen on that thing and it has like a frame and a half of lag or 2 frames of lag, and then you add in a crappy D-pad on the side of it. Like that's
that's a deal breaker.
That's really all it takes to make it not work. So I'm curious though.
There's actually a very similar device that they just made in China. I can't remember what the heck it's called.
Is it the GDP Win? The GDP Win, is that it?
I think that is the... Wait, isn't the GDP Win like a little bit less powerful?
Yes.
I don't remember.
They made a new version of that thing, but it's like sold out and you can't find it anywhere.
Oh, yeah.
But when I look at it, it doesn't look that comfortable to play on, though. The GDP Win. That's why I've never really been too interested in it, because it doesn't look like... I can't see myself sitting down and grinding out shmup runs or character action games or stuff on it. But on this Steam Deck, I look at that, I'm like, you could sit down and really put in some serious gaming on this thing, potentially.
Yeah.
GDP Win. GPD Win. Okay. I would say GDP. Global Domestic Product. Right. GPD Win. I think that's a better name, though. They should change it. All right, chat. Any other hot takes before we call it? Yeah, it's like it's $1,200. That's just way too much.
Jesus.
Yeah, because it's like the analog thing where they made 12 of them. It's like, here.
Right. And sell the rest on eBay.
Yeah, sell the rest on eBay. That is, until you brought that up, I never thought about that. But man, what if?
Yeah.
I mean, that's such a obvious strategy. I don't know why I ever thought about that.
And like I said, like the fact that they have you like put in your email to gauge the interest, like that's what really gets me. Like, oh, so now they're gonna print the exact amount that they need and then sell them on eBay. If it's not like a huge amount of people that are interested, they're gonna be like, oh well, it looks like we're upselling this one, boys.
Yeah. BlackRock wants a hotter hot take section. I agree. Give us some hot takes and we'll give it to you. I think the analog one was pretty hot though, but maybe not. I'm trying to think of other hot takes. I mentioned RGBs kind of overrated. PVMs are overrated, I think, because while they do have nice video quality, they're the size of they're tiny. How are you supposed to do some serious shmupping on one of those? So I think PVMs are overrated, and their price inflation is ridiculous, especially when you can just play on like a CRT computer monitor that's like $12 that you can buy on Craigslist or whatever. Like, I have a bunch of CRT computer monitors, and they have VGA. They support higher resolutions than a PVM even. I really don't get the whole I don't get the whole PVM craze, other than it just went along really nicely with your Super Nintendo and you could plug your Super Nintendo into it. But if you start to expand out what your interests are, I think they become kind of overpriced, to be honest.
And here's a hot take. Those component cables that somebody makes.
Oh, yes. Retro Vision or something like that. That they had like on My Life in Gaming.
Yeah. Those, like, they're like $80 or $100 component cables for Super Nintendo.
Yes.
And, well, I just got to say that the guy in that company is kind of a dick. Because, so, like, there's a bunch of people working on that mod in the forum, right? And like kind of like tweezing out all the little details, and he sort of figured out like a way to do it with zero lag. But instead of sharing it with everybody, he went off and was like, "I'm gonna sell this shit."
Yeah, I know. That's like the classic story, isn't it? Like,
I mean, like, God bless his soul. Like, you can't hate on him for it. Like, he's making a product that people are buying. But like $80, come on, bro.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's like the thing that's really frustrating about like the retro gaming space is there's a certain section of it that just has money to burn, baby. They've got pockets, and they've got deep pockets. And so this is where you get stuff like the analog Nintendo that's gold plated and all this stuff that these companies, sorry, I'm about to sneeze. But that's where you get these companies making these really, I think, ridiculous products just to get at those pockets. And then you got like the other side of it, like me, where I'm a cheap bastard. And so you got to really make something really compelling for me to buy it. And it's kind of like this weird dichotomy between the sections, and where you can get like weird products, right? Like $80, $100 component cables or whatever it's on. It's like, really? that seems a little much.
I think it's because like there's so many older people on the retro scene.
Yes.
And they either like aren't knowledgeable enough or like don't know how to like look shit up on the internet, and they also have more money to burn because obviously they work for longer over the period of their life.
And I've always felt, this is another hot take. Okay, you want the hot takes, you're getting the hot takes, BlackRock. I've always felt like deep down, some of these people like that it's expensive. They like spending that money. It means more. And so buying a Nintendo that's modded, that's like $200, yeah, whatever. Buying a $1,000 or however expensive that Nintendo was, that's gold plated, and you're paying that money and you're flexing it. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like when you get into buying expensive luxury items that you can just kind of flex on people. I think that's part of it too. Is like some of these people love to flex it, and so the fact that the thing is so expensive like adds to it in a weird way.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I'm involved in like cryptocurrency and stuff like that. Like I've been into it for about 10 years now, and there's like a new field within cryptocurrency called non-fungible tokens, NFTs.
Oh my gosh, yes, I've heard about these.
Yeah, and you can attach like a piece of art to like a coin, basically. So you're just basically having like a tokenized art piece online, which is definitely innovative, and it's actually been around for a long time. It's strange to me that it randomly blew up this year, but it like really flows with that point you made, that like people will really just pay that money just to flex that art.
Exactly. There's like no other reason.
Yeah, there really isn't any other reason. Like you could just right click, copy, save JPEG, like. But the reason why you buy it is that you can flex on people.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. And I feel like, too, it's really interesting. Like, whenever I'm looking to buy something, I sort of have to justify my purchases to my family. And that really changes how you view things. Because imagine if you're going to buy these things, like your gold-plated NES or a non-fungible token with a GIF of a cat or something. But you have, like, someone who you have to justify these purchases to. It starts to be, you start to look at things a lot more differently. Like, wait a minute here. Okay, how am I going to justify? Because there's been times where I've wanted to buy things and I've sat down and thought, okay, can I really justify this purchase? And I think retro gaming, like you're saying, there's a certain sector of sellers that definitely prey on that.
Right. And oh, that reminds me of somebody mentioned the RetroTink 2X, which I think is a phenomenal product because it's
Oh
like
yeah,
it's reasonably priced and yeah, it's great.
I have a RetroTink 1 that I bought, actually not for gaming, but sort of for gaming, to rip VHSs with, because I have these Super Play VHSs of Dodonpachi. I'm really trying to rip them and preserve them for everyone else to see them. And
That's sweet.
They're recorded in 60 frames per second because they're video games, right? Well, it turns out most things that convert VHS or whatever, like captures, they can't handle 60 FPS. So I bought one of those and I went to convert it, and they just can't handle it. It like makes them freak out and all that sort of stuff and go crazy. And so I actually bought the RetroTink. I was saying that, so I bought those like traditional things that you used to rip tapes with, but they can't handle 60 FPS. It turns out they freak out and they go crazy colors and everything. It doesn't work. So I got the RetroTink just to rip these tapes, and it works fantastically. And I've also started using it for other things. I mean, this thing's a beast. I used it on my PS1, I think it was. So I like this RetroTink. I like it a lot. The 2X Pro, the older one, I definitely support it, especially since it supports S-Video. That's huge, because if you don't want to sit and RGB mod all your crap, like your PS1s and your PS2s and everything, like just throwing it into S-Video, it looks great too. So yeah, I'm a big fan of the RetroTinks.
Yeah, I think that's another like hot take we really discussed this time was that S-Video is really almost on par with RGB, but no one wants to say that.
Yeah, because it undercuts the whole industry around RGB, which is huge.
Exactly, and it's held up by people like RetroRGB.
Yeah.
Who has great information on his website, great channel. I've seen like almost all his videos. I'm not trying to throw shade at him, but it definitely draws people into spending so much money on RGB stuff.
Yeah, that's, as a YouTuber, I've thought about this a lot actually, about this sort of relationship you have with products that I don't think people really think about too much.
Yes.
Where,
yep.
Like, I've really struggled with this because I don't like to shill things, except things that I love to shill. Like, I will shill the M2 shot triggers ports at you all day because there's just nothing that can compete with those things. Like, they're just the best, right? So I'll go ahead and shill that. But especially with these like retro products, it gets dicey for me because, like you're saying, like with the analog system, right? Like, let's say I did a video on the analog system. I'm like, well, but the Mister's better, right? But there's so many like internal politics, like people it gets ugly real quick.
Yeah, so on this topic, since it's hot takes and we brought this up, I'm gonna point out that I have caught RetroRGB throwing around some shade at people unnecessarily, fudding their stuff. Fudding means fear, uncertainty, doubt, just sowing fear, uncertainty, and doubt in other people's products that are not related to the products that he's related to, which is what you were kind of touching on. And I can point out what's that?
Spicy takes.
Yeah, this is gonna be a spicy one. Get ready. So I've caught him on videos denigrating other people's mods, saying like they're dangerous, they'll break your shit. And actually, there's a perfect example here. Go on to Dojin Dance's RGB. I want to say it's a RGB mod for SNES, And he says on that comment, he says in the comments like, "Oh, I just tested this with my multimeter, and that's where the 5 volt comes out. So you'll fry your like equipment." And I had a comment on that because I looked up the pinout because I knew it was nonsense. I was like, this is nonsense. Like Dojin Dance knows exactly what he's doing. So I looked up the pinout, and sure as shit, you know, he's just talking smack. Like it's absolutely not true. Dojin Dance is 100% legit. And he was just throwing shade at Dojin Dance because he's a direct competitor of Voltar, who is affiliated with RGB. Yeah, that's actually what really attracted me to your channel and Shmup Junkie's channel, who I found originally. That you guys both have integrity and you just lay out the facts, and it's great. You know, you can trust you guys. It's not dishonest. Like,
yeah.
And
Well,
like Shmup Junkie,
the road to it is no one really likes you. That's the like you don't get as good of a like you don't get in with like people don't send me things to review or anything like that. Probably partly because I'm not that popular, but even there are places where I feel like I could, but it's like I don't even do it then because it almost would be mean of me to be like, here, send me your product, and then I just eviscerate their product. It's like that's kind of mean of me to do that to them. So it's a weird.
well,
There's lots
nothing
of
wrong with that. People will still, you know, companies still will like that publicity because even if a product's not like 100%, like people will still get it. Like how Shmup Junkie like did the review on the PC Engine Mini. He said like, you know, this is gonna have some input delay, but if you don't mind that, like it might be a good solution for you. Like,
yeah,
you know, he's got an HD connection and all
yeah,
that.
yeah. I think that's exactly.
And so
yeah, it's
like,
complicated.
it is. So, you know, like obviously I don't think they sent him, you know, any products. I'm pretty sure he just bought it on his
I'm
own.
pretty sure he bought it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he just bought it.
Because he was like he was like 1,000 something subscribers when he did that video. He wasn't they wouldn't have sent him anything even if he asked. Like you need to have a good
I know.
viewership.
I was just saying that like I'm sure that like somebody who made like if I was the one who to make the PC Engine Mini and he did that review, I would have been hype because it's honest, but you know people aren't gonna be like people aren't gonna outright stiff arm it, you know.
Yeah,
So.
and you know what? There's a whole video. I don't know if you've seen the episode called "The Great Input Lag Debate," where it's me and Shmup Junkie talking about all this stuff.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, it's a great episode. But one thing that I've learned over doing my reviews of this stuff is I'm in a very small selection of people who actually cares about input lag all that much. Like most people, I'm not saying it's a good thing, but it's just a reality. Most people don't care all that much really about input lag and stuff like that. So
yeah, most people don't care about it. Only people who are really trash like me care about it.
No, I think the better players care about it deeply, like too, because when you start playing and you start grinding hundreds of hours of runs, like every little edge counts. You know, it's like kind of like in sports,
right.
where you want like the
different.
high.
Like on the competitive scene, you like if you're playing with input delay, you're already playing at a disadvantage.
Yeah, exactly.
So that makes sense.
That's a huge deal.
Yeah, like on the competitive scene makes 100% sense. You know, like that's why you get a 1 millisecond monitor as opposed to like.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and some shmups you have to react. A lot of people, I mean, it sounds obvious, but some people seem to think that you can just memorize the entire shmup. Some shmups you can, but most shmups there's a reaction element to them, no matter how much you practice. Like caves, they add these little variations every time you play with certain boss fights and certain patterns where you just. You have a strategy, but you also have to react at some degree. You can't memorize Hibachi and just dodge Hibachi. You know, you have to react to what he's doing.
Yeah, especially when you have like, well, I guess you know, competitively that makes sense what you're saying, but on for an average player or whatever, the when you're going up and down in rank, like the game changes pretty dramatically. So like you said, you have to be like on your toes as far as dodging stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm gonna be playing this CPS2 Dymaho after we get off.
Well, awesome. Thanks for coming on the episode. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, my pleasure. I feel like I was blessed being on your episode.
Yeah, it was a great time. And thanks for tuning in, everyone in chat.
And again, in chat, if you guys need help modding anything or like have any questions about anything at all that we covered, you can find me in Electric's Discord or Shmup Junkie's Discord under the name Moondog.
Yeah, is there any other place you want people to track you down, or is that good enough?
I think that should be good enough on Discord.
Yeah,
So,
it's good enough for me.
Yeah. So.
Alrighty, adios, everyone.